You're listening to Fade to Black with your host, Jimmy Church, on the Dark Matter Radio Network. Don't run and hide. Don't be afraid. Don't turn away any longer. The truth will set you free. And now, your host, the captain of conspiracy, the prince of paranormal. This ain't your daddy's radio network show. This is Jimmy Church, Fade to Black. All right. Bring it down. Here we go. How you doing? Fade to Black. Nice and comfy. Ready to go. Here we go. Today's Thursday, April 24th. 110 days into the new year. Oh, man, I am jacked up. Feeling good. I need a Starbucks endorsement. That's who we need to sponsor this show. We need to say something like, live from the Starbucks studios. Love my Starbucks. Live. April 24th. We're 110 days into the new year. And as always, we are live from the JP Motorsports Studios right here in Burbank, California. Beautiful day outside. I hope it's great where you are. To everybody listening around the world, hither and thither, to and fro, tangled up in my headset cable. Far and near, left and right, north and south. Welcome. For KJCR and the Dark Matter Radio Network, I am your host, Jimmy Church. And that's right, it is the Thursday edition of Fade to Black. Got a great show today. Excited, jacked. It's going to be good. You know how I start off every show. Started off with a salute to the proud men and women in uniform all around the world fighting the good fight for us. Without them, there is no me, there is no you, there is no us. And you couldn't hear me right now. Think about it. Man, we got calls coming in already. You're going to have to hang on, man. Let me get the show started. And if you can hear me right now, call back. Today, Shirley MacLaine, 80 years old. We need her. And that's why I'm saying it's her birthday today. Love Shirley. And I guarantee you right now, it's a pretty unique party at the MacLaine pad. You don't know who is there, do you? Neither does she. Fashion designer Jean-Paul Gaultier is 62 years old. And why do we care about that? Oh, we do. Because he is the reason The Fifth Element was so friggin' cool. That's who Jean-Paul is. Love that guy. Love it. Every time you watch The Fifth Element, you think about what I just said right now. Little slice of me. And Cedric the Entertainer, he's 50. Oh, love him. His funniest stuff to me, Eddie in Barbershop. Rawr. Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. Let's get it going. Twitter's already moving forward. Right now I'm watching it. At J Church Radio, that's what you do. Just go over, just look what you're doing right now. You're at Dark Matter Radio. You're on the Faded Black page. Just scroll up and click on those three buttons. Go and do it. It's what you do, and you should do it now. At J Church Radio. And I kind of made that announcement a couple of weeks ago, which is, we've installed another monitor here. I've got Twitter staring at me on its own monitor, glowing in my face. So take advantage of it. All right. Like, follow, subscribe. Go and do it. Let's see. What else? Tonight we're going to have open lines. I was talking to Kevin earlier today. Great guy. And he said, man, I want to take some calls. I said, okay. All right. So we'll do that. We'll get the first part of the show out of the way, and we'll set the tables. Open them up. 323-825-5045. That's the call-in number. If you're gonna Skype, it's Fade to Black 14. No spaces. The number 14. Fade to Black 14. Okay, you can email throughout the show. You know the drill. Love it. Jimmy@jimmychurchradio.com. And that's direct. If you want to do something in confidence, you can do it on the website. Go ahead. But always remember, everything goes to the producers here. You have to understand. If you're looking for something really quick and you want to get something off and you think it's going to be cool and in it comes, I don't see it. Seriously, you have to convince the other room here with the staff that you are worthy. So just make it worthy, make it good, and make it relevant. Then I see it. So there is a delay. Then I have to read it. And they'll put a little note on there. You got to read this one first. Check this one out. Okay, so that's how it works. Had a couple of emails this week actually asking me for the secret email. How do I get to you direct? How do I just get, Jimmy, what's the secret email? Well, there isn't one. Okay, Jimmy@jimmychurchradio.com. That is my personal email, and that's what you do. If you don't want to go that route, do it on the website. It's up to you, but it goes to somebody else first until the show's over. Then after that, then I go and go crazy. Okay? All right. Let's see. Church rant from last night. The church rant where we did the Nessie pictures and lots of creative stuff. Okay. You know what? Somebody really wants to let's bring this call in. Let's see who's calling. Okay, you're live. This is Jimmy. Who's calling? Okay. You know what? Somebody really wants to turn down the radio. You're on a delay.
All right. Jimmy, how you doing?
Yeah. Who's this?
This is Michael.
Michael, how are you?
I'm doing excellent. I had just a theory I've been working on about the Belgian wave.
Okay.
I know it's kind of been disproven in the past, but I'm not sure. I know you're a huge sports fan from talking to you in the past.
Okay.
Off the radio.
Right.
I don't know if you have checked into all the players in the Belgian soccer team, all born after the Belgian wave was reportedly seen, because they have a really strong squad. Thought it'd be something that'd be interesting for you guys to check into a little bit deeper.
Well, that's a pretty good take, actually. I tell you what, Michael, shoot me an email of all the players and their birth dates, and then we'll get the staff working on that, and we'll cross reference and maybe even talk to David Marler about it, and see if there is something that's an interesting take. And I gotta
seen it online before.
Yeah, I gotta say, man, thank you for this phone call. That was good. That was really good. Yeah. All right, we'll look into it. Shoot me an email, and you've obviously done a little bit of breaking down. So break it down for me, and we'll get right on it.
All right.
Michael,
cool.
You enjoy the rest of
the show, Jimmy.
Yeah, thank you, Michael.
All right. Have a good one.
You too.
All right. Bye.
Bye-bye. All right. Well, that's actually, that's why you call into this show. Right there. That was a brilliant phone call. Brilliant. Wow. That's good. That's really good. Okay. Church rant from last night was Nessie. Again, thank you, Mike, for that phone call. It was really good. About the Nessie photographs that we posted last night. Now, and I said send some stuff in. Had a bunch of really good ones, but check out this email. This came in from Renee in Tucson. How you doing, Renee? But she said, Jimmy, Loch Ness figure looks like a USO to me. That was it. That's all she said. And she's right. hit that one right out of the park. After I read the email, I actually took the time to go back and look at the pictures. And I've got to say, and it's pretty large too, whatever it is, because you can see the trees on the coast. Now, if you wonder what we're talking about, just go over to jimmychurchradio.com right now. The church rant is still up. We didn't pull it down today. So the pictures of Nessie are there, the original and the enlargement. And if you missed the show last night, what we're what we're referring to is some Google Earth images. A couple of Nessie hunters took the time to scan around Loch Ness and found this thing in the water, and it's humongous. Whatever it is, it's big. I didn't think USO. I was thinking, brontosaurus with fins, because whatever it is, it's huge. And no head, though. No head and neck. So, I guess that kind of takes out brontosaurus and moves us right over to USO. I thought that was a really good email. Thanks. Thank you, Renee. All right. Now, got another email yesterday right after the show. This came in from Perth, Australia, and it's pretty cool. Our good friends over there in Australia. I don't know what the time change is, but I got to imagine it's 12 hours or something, 14 hours. So they're in the middle of the day there. Or are they in the middle of, it would be maybe 7 o'clock in the morning there. But we have tons of listeners in Australia. And this came in live from the show. My gut feelings, hi, Jimmy. My gut feeling tells me the beeping and buzzing signals. Oh, hold on. Let me set this up. This is, yesterday we had Seth Shostak on the show from SETI. And so that's what this email is in reference to, the SETI search. My gut feeling tells me that the beeping and buzzing signals would be investigated carefully, making sure before alerting the big boys. But if there was a direct communication link beyond reasonable doubt that it came from deep space and was easily translated, that the number one protocol would be to call the bat line first, so to speak. That came in from JC. It was an awesome email. Awesome email, and he's right, actually. And that was from Perth, Western Australia. Okay. P.S. Oh, that's right. P.S. I think that possible signals from outer space would only come from civilizations with an equal backward transmitting ability. But those that are 1,000 years ahead will do just a drive-by when they please, with a don't feed the animals policy from JC. And I was talking about that yesterday. That's kind of, before you think there's anything negative, you kind of have to look at it this way. They either don't care or they're really interested. It's going to be one or the other. And you're absolutely right, JC. Good email. All right. So let's get to it. When I come back, we will get to the news, some other stuff that I want to get out of the way before we get to Kevin. Tonight, Kevin Todeschi, Executive Director and CEO of Edgar Cayce's ARE and Atlantic University. And we're going to talk about America's own, the Sleeping Prophet. Tweet at JChurchRadio. Email Jimmy at jimmychurchradio.com. I'm going to take a quick break. I'll be back in a second. This is Fade to Black, the Thursday edition. Stay with us, everybody. Don't touch that mouse.
You're listening to Jimmy Church Fade to Black on the Dark Matter Radio Network.
What's up, revolutionaries? It's me, Jimmy Church. Do you have an IRS or state tax issue? Well, I did, and I called national tax experts. My problems were fixed, done, fini, and man, I got to tell you, it was a relief. National tax experts are a recognized tax office that services clients in all 50 states.
Doesn't matter where you live. Give them a call. I'm telling you, they take the time to understand each and every client's individual financial status as well as their financial goals. And that's exactly what you need, my brother, when you're taking on the evil three-letter. So, seriously, give them a call today at 1-877-909-5444. Again, 1-877-909-5444. Or go check out their website, www.nattaxexperts.com. That's NATTAXEXPERTS.com. Tell them Jimmy sent you.
This is KJCR at JimmyChurchRadio.com.
On the Dark Matter Radio Network.
All right. All right, James, I'm reading you. Let's get it cracking. Cracking number one. All right, let's go. Fade to Black on the Dark Matter Radio Network. Welcome to everybody listening around the world. Truly humbled. It's the greatest gig in the world to hang out with you guys every single night. I got to tell you. Producers just let me know. It is 12:16 p.m. somewhere in Australia right now. There you go. Okie dokie. What are we going to do now? Got to talk about MH370. I'm not going to let it go, by the way. It's not going to happen here. Not going to let it go. I'm going to ride that one out. I don't feel right about it. I'm not going to let it go. And those passengers and crew deserve just that. So I'll start off the headline for today, which is the same as yesterday. Pings are gone, plane is gone, debris is gone, boats and planes still searching. Now it's more than 6 weeks now since this plane disappeared. And the Malaysian Prime Minister said tonight that they're not prepared, or yesterday their time, that they're not ready to declare it and the people on board lost. And I'm going to quote, this is from a CNN interview today. Quote, at some point in time, it would be, but not right now. I think I need to take into account the feelings of the next of kin. And some of them have said publicly that they are not willing to accept it until they find hard evidence. End quote. PM Razak. And I got to say, that is just one of the most disturbing statements. First off, he declared it lost already and everybody dead. That was the wrong move. Freaked everybody out. He had to backpedal. But, and, you know, I don't like to just give comments after reading the news and my comments, my personal impressions and so forth. That's not the way it should be. But in this case, I find it just mind-boggling that plane turned left and headed toward Antarctica. It's insane. It's just insane to me. And we don't know a thing. It's just insane. And I keep saying it and repeating it every single night. But what are you, what am I, what is everybody to do or think except for just that? Not a single pillow, blanket, seat cushion, piece of luggage, carry-on, purse, shoe. Nothing. It's insane. The oldest pterodactyl has been found in China. Check it out. It's called the Cryptodrachen. And that's Chinese for pretty cool. It flew about 163 million years ago, but finding it, it's a little cruiser guy too. It's not some big humongous thing. It's a little cruiser guy. He's about 1.5 meters across, about the size of your dog. And it's also furry. He's got a little fur. Pretty cool looking guy. But it's 5 million years older than the oldest pterodactyl. Hence the name, Cryptodrachen. which means, the original dragon. And it was named after Hidden Dragon. It was named after the movie Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. Crypto means hidden. Draken is serpent. And I thought that was really cool. But that's not why I'm mentioning this. Why I'm mentioning this is this. Do you think, I want you to think about this because I've done this a million times. I just want to make sure that I'm not the only one. Do you think a couple of pterodactyls could have, a couple families survived 66 million years ago, somehow escaped? And maybe those were the dragons that everybody was seeing in China and Japan and in Europe. I don't think it's so mythological. I don't. And today, I just went on a little pterodactyl run. I'm just looking at different pictures and bones and stuff. And I got to say, there's your dragon right there. And I don't think anybody from Northern Europe or China found fossils 1,500 years ago. I just don't see that. It's like the answer. It's like the missing link. I dig it. So there you go. Crypto Draken. Oh, let's see. Singularity and the singularity. And if you don't know what that is, and I'm not talking about time travel, micro singularities. No, I'm talking about the singularity. It's a hypothetical moment when artificial intelligence is going to meet and surpass humans. And what that moment means to us. It's frightening. Now, the time when there are different figures and equations and Moore's law and so forth that comes into play here, and the advancement of circuitry and intelligence and RAM and memory and everything else. But when that does happen, what happens the next day? When they are smarter than us? Well, it sounds like it's a long ways off, and it's not. Go check it out. It's pretty cool. We're looking at dates from everywhere from, Ray Kurzweil, and we all know Ray, and I come from the music industry, and there's a keyboard company called Kurzweil that he founded. And so I've known about Ray and his visionary stuff for the future for a long time. Speech recognition and very smart guy. And him and Werner Ving, go and read what these guys are saying about it. Now, we've got dates everywhere from 2017. It's possible as early as 2007. We're in 2014 right now. Think about this. To a general consensus of around 2030 to 2040. We're talking about next week. This is just right around the corner. And if you're listening to me right now, you will be alive when this happens. So, is it the age of the machines? There's a couple of really cool articles that are out right now. And there's one over on Motherboard if you want to go and check that out. Check out Singularity on Wikipedia and get the crap scared out of you because it's going to happen. Now, this is the thing. What do? Machines are going crazy. You unplug them. Now they're smarter than you now. They've got something to protect them from that. Oh, EMP pulse. Oh, they've already built shielding around their core units. They've thought ahead. Anything that you can think of, they're one step ahead of you after that date. And it's right around the corner. It's right around the corner. So what we have to do now while we're still one step ahead is get the doomsday kill switch installed and perfected because it's going to happen. The singularity. You've got to go and check it out. It's over on Motherboard. That's one of them. And Kurzweil, he's some of his stuff is a little crazy, but most of his stuff is spot on the money, which kind of takes us to what tonight's show is about: profits. And I had mentioned over the last couple of weeks, I brought it up and slipped it in a couple of times, and my mind does that sometimes. So you have to go with me on this. Sometimes my brain is connected to my jaw, and I can't stop what I'm saying, and I let it slip. Have somebody help me out with one prophet somewhere one time that got it right. I just want to know. I was setting everybody up for the guest that we're going to have on tonight, Kevin Todeschi, and it's going to be an amazing show. But Ray Kurzweil is one of those guys. Everybody thinks about Nostradamus or whatever. No, you need to be a little bit more real. And Kurzweil, things have come to pass. Ray Kurzweil is a smart guy. So that's the show tonight. I wanted to touch upon Ukraine a little bit, only because I'm thinking very positive about what's going on over there. But I'm happy to say that I think Ukraine kind of woke up. And I think everything's going to be a little bit smoothed out. They've kind of cleared some of the occupations that have been going on. One last thing I wanted to touch upon, talking about singularity, prophecy, the future. The new internet is here. Google and AT&T are now competing, and this is why you have to love this country, competition, capitalism, and everything that I believe in, and you do too. It's called competition. No monopolies out there, like the old days with the Bell system and the telephones. No, these guys want your business and will improve things so much to get it and to earn it. And right now, Google and AT&T across the country are now moving towards gigabit speeds for everyone. Gigabit. And if you don't understand what that means, these new fiber optic networks that are probably, well, I don't know where you're at, but if they're not there now, they will be soon. I've got a list of cities here. Will be 100 times faster than broadband. And that seriously means no more buffering, no more waiting. To put it into context, listen to this. You can download on the new fiber network, which is now, this is today, this isn't the future, this is now, a full-length HD movie, full-length, 38 seconds. By the time it takes you to take two breaths. Cities that everything is going into right now: San Jose, Provo, Portland, Phoenix, Austin, San Antonio, Atlanta, Nashville, Kansas City, Charlotte, of course, Los Angeles, Augusta. You can't have the Masters tournament without gigabit internet. Cleveland, Fort Worth, Greensboro, Houston, Fort Lauderdale, Nashville, Miami, Oakland, Orlando, San Diego, St. Louis, San Francisco. I've left a bunch out. But it's here, and it's exciting, and it's cheap. It's crazy, and that's what competition will do. You got to love it. You got to love it. And Keith, you know what that means. No more jitter. This is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. This is the Thursday edition. Tomorrow, Michael Basiago, or Andrew Basiago. Time travel. Tonight, it's Edgar Cayce, The Legacy, with Kevin Todeschi. I'll be right back. Don't touch that mouse. Light up Twitter, email. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. I'll be back right after this.
Way out here, we listen to Jimmy Church on the Dark Matter Radio Network.
Dark matter.
Dark matter. Dark matter. Dark matter. Dark matter.
You're listening to Fade to Black
On the Dark Matter Radio Network.
¿Qué tal, mis amigos? Yo soy Mario Carson, el tiburón, y los invito para que escuchen a mi buen amigo Jimmy Church Radio. ¡Claro que sí!
Oi, oi, I'm Reese Evans. You're listening to Jimmy Church. This is Revolution. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution is on radio. Ciao.
Yeah, the smooth sounds of Doug Aldrich. This is Fade to Black, the Thursday edition. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Welcome, everybody. KJCR on the Dark Matter Radio Network. Let's get this cracking. And Christopher, I see it, but I haven't said Gobekli Tepe once tonight, so give me a break. Gobekli Tepe. Kevin J. Todeschi is the executive director and CEO of Edgar Cayce's ARE, an Atlantic University, as well as a popular author and speaker. As both student and teacher of the Cayce material for more than 30 years, he has lectured on 5 continents. A prolific writer, he is the author of 20 books, including bestsellers Edgar Cayce on the Akashic Records, Edgar Cayce on Soulmates, and Edgar Cayce on Vibrations. His latest book, Edgar Cayce on Auras and Colors, was written with professional psychic Carol and Liaros and explores tools for seeing the human aura and for understanding the interpretation of color. I would like to welcome to the program Kevin Todeschi. Kevin, how are you, sir?
Great, Jimmy. Thanks for having me on the show.
Thank you. First off, seriously, thank you. And before we get things started, welcome to the program. And I do the same thing every night, Kevin, with every guest. The audience is used to it, but I just simply and humbly say, we're just going to sit in my living room, have a conversation. There's no agenda, there's no questions. And however we start and end is where it goes. And hopefully we'll be friends at the end.
Okay, great.
Oh, man, a little nervous laugh because I'm kind of excited. And now, let's just start here. Let's and I kind of say this every night. The first question and the start of the conversation is always the softball. It's the easiest thing to kind of get past because we need to set the stage, you and I, for everything that follows, which is let's start first with who was Edgar Cayce. Let's start there for everybody in a basic sense. We'll start there. And you've been doing this for 40 years. So let's move into how you started down this path.
All right. Well, starting with Edgar Cayce. Edgar Cayce is the most documented psychic of all time. He lived between 1877 and 1945. For 43 years of his adult life, somehow he had the ability to lay down, put himself to sleep, lie on a couch, and close his eyes. And when he was falling asleep, his wife generally would give him the name and address of someone, and he could tune into that person at a distance and answer any question that he was asked about that person, their life, their health, their relationships, their soul's purpose, their soul history. The answers he gave are called readings. We have copies of 14,306 readings in Virginia Beach, Virginia, and more than 300 books have been written about his life and work. It is an amazing collection of material. I've been involved for 40 years, and I still now find new things that inspire and excite me, and I feel very blessed to have the job I have working with the Cayce material. In terms of how I got involved, when I was 15 years old, so 40 years ago, when I was 15 years old, I had been sent away to a thing called Boys State. I don't even know if they still have it, but it was basically a way for young men to learn about the government if some of their teachers thought they might be good in the government. And I went off to that at a college for a week one summer, and during one of the breaks I went to a bookstore, and a book kind of popped out at me. It was called A Prophet in His Own Country, The Story of the Young Edgar Cayce by Just Stern. And I read that book. I came home and told my father, I'm supposed to move to Virginia Beach, and I'm supposed to be president of ARE. And 40 years later, here I am, still involved in doing it.
For me, and throughout the 60s, I can't speak for the 50s, I wasn't there, but throughout the 60s and the 70s, I knew my friends or my friends' parents and the people that were around me, and certainly my own mother, there were always, I could go to a friend's house and find an Edgar Cayce book somewhere. And my mom had bookshelves full. She read them all the time. And so, you're influenced as a kid with this stuff. And, because of, the universe and science and the unexplained and everything, and you start reading stuff like this and you're just blown away. And growing up over the years, he is somebody that has just kept our attention and our intrigue. What is it, before I get into how he did it and what is there and so forth, what is it about Edgar Cayce for even the skeptics out there, the fascination is there?
Well, I think much of it lies in the fact that people just like you and I asked Mr. Cayce questions that they needed help with. How do I heal this relationship? What can I do about my health? What is the purpose of my life? How can I find a closer walk with God? Anything that people ask nowadays, and because those answers are still relevant to much of the human family,
sure.
I think that certainly is a hallmark of the information. Another thing that has always been extremely important to me is the Cayce information is just rich with practical tools that, he may say something, you don't have to accept it on face value, but you can try it. And I know that when I was in college, I had a really horrible experience with allergies. I was getting 6 allergy shots a week, and so I looked into the Cayce information on allergies, and just with working with a few simple tools, in a very short time, I got past my allergies. I don't even take pills anymore. And so I think there is information there that can be readily helpful, great and inspiring, and it continues to help people to this day. And I think that's what is really draws people to the work.
Is there any video, any film? Certainly there's a lot of photography and stuff that goes way back with him, but is there any film of him sleeping and going through a session?
We do not have any film of him sleeping going through a session. We have a video of him at a conference in 1943 that we show in our introductory film, and we have one very poor recording of him giving a reading, a health reading, that we it's actually on our website and on our YouTube channel, I believe. But it's not a very good quality. It was the old recording that looked like a cylinder that would turn around.
And, the Edison, yeah, okay,
yeah.
Right. Is there any secret stuff that we don't know about, or is everything out on the table?
Are there any secret readings? I get asked that. If there are, I sure don't know about them. No, there's not.
Okay.
They're all the readings we have. We have the originals in the vault, a cement on 6-side vault, and we have digitized all the readings and all the background information so that many of them are available online, and members can access all of them from anywhere in the world.
So let's take me back a little bit. Obviously, in that period, in the early to mid 1900s, media, advertising, word on the street, and so forth wasn't anything like it is today. And it's something that we take for granted, and it's an obvious thing to see and say. But for him, his reputation really went out there pretty quick. How were people contacting him from across the country, and how were those consultations done, and who did he pick and choose from? Because there must have been a line, around the block. Who did he, deem worthy of his time? Because we were talking earlier today, and I was thinking about this. He would sleep and read for about 45 minutes at a crack, right?
About twice a day do that.
Yeah. So, there's not enough days and weeks and months in the year to do it with everybody. So, he had to have a filter on. How did they contact him, and how did, the lucky ones get chosen?
Well, let's start back early on. Early on, it was mostly spread by word of mouth. He lived in Hopkinsville, Kentucky. Later on, he moved to Selma, Alabama. And people around him, his family, for example, knew that somehow he had this ability. He had given readings to family members. He had given readings to people in town, and that basically he gave readings to people who had no other hope generally. And early on in Kentucky, one doctor named Wesley Ketchum, who was an MD, had Cayce give readings in exchange for buying him some photography equipment. Cayce really wanted to be a photographer. And he was so impressed with the results that he wrote an article for a medical research journal, which that article was picked up by the New York Times in 1910. And basically it was the article about how a farmer boy became a doctor when hypnotized. And that really began an ongoing, regular, although not to the same extent as a blog or the internet or anything like we have today, but ongoing publicity. But early on, Cayce had a hard time getting readings sometimes, because sometimes now when we tell friends, we're interested in ETs, or we're interested in the possibility of reincarnation, or we're interested in even meditation, sometimes people think that sounds a little weird. Well, imagine what Cayce went through 100 years ago. So he was not inundated for the bulk of his life. It wasn't really until 1943 when a magazine called Coronet Magazine published an article about the Miracle Man of Virginia Beach, and that same year his biography, There Is a River, came out, that he was inundated. And I mentioned to you earlier that the request for readings became so tremendous that even though his own readings had told him not to give more than 2 a day, he felt badly for all these people who needed help. He told his secretary that just touching an envelope, he could feel their pain or their sickness or their sorrow or whatever was going on in their life. And so he told his secretary to book 8 readings a day to try to catch up.
Wow.
He eventually had a stroke, basically worked himself to death. And when he passed away, the readings had been booked 8 readings a day, 2 years in advance. In terms of how they got through, basically he did it as they came in. So, I mean, there were definitely occasions where if someone showed up in Virginia Beach and needed help, they would move to the front of the line above the stacks of mail. But he felt like that he should take them the way they came in, and that's how they were scheduled.
And basically, were they health issues?
Everything.
The majority, everything was health.
No, it was everything you can imagine. I mean, remember, this was during World War II, and so it was everything from serious health issues to missing loved ones, mothers worried about their sons who were overseas and wanting to know what was going on with them during the war. So everything. And in fact, if you look at the Edgar Cayce readings in total, Cayce mentioned more than 10,000 different topics. Many of those are health-related, but he talked about everything you can imagine, and that's why I often say that regardless of your field of study or personal interest, there's something in the Cayce material that you can strike your interest. Because again, these questions were asked just like people like you and I who had the same kinds of questions.
Right. And how did he take me through? I'm going to back up after this question. We're going to back up a little bit, but let's go to like 1940, 1941, 42, 43, where now he's got the methodology down. He knows what he's doing, and he's got his stenographer or his secretary there, and you know what I mean? They have a system, right? They have a system. So what exactly would happen? Would he force himself to sleep, or did he know that he was getting ready to start with something? And was there any precognition, or was he able to just lay down, knock out, and go?
Well, early on, so let's go back a little further.
Okay.
He around the first reading we have a copy of is from 1901, and the year prior to that, he had a problem with a really severe headache. He took a sedative, and when he woke up, he had laryngitis, which we wouldn't really worry about. But the laryngitis persisted, and he was a salesperson at the time. And the laryngitis went on for weeks and then months, and he could hardly speak above a whisper. Well, pretty soon he was out of a job because he couldn't talk.
Right.
And that's why he became a photographer, because he didn't really have to talk. And he went to some people in Kentucky, insisted he go to a stage show. And at the turn of the century, hypnosis was getting a revival throughout the country. And he went to the stage show, and his friends volunteered him to go up on stage. And he told the hypnotist he couldn't speak. And so the hypnotist put him under, and while asleep, Cayce could talk normally. And so later on, they got another hypnotist, and he had a great idea. While under, he asked Edgar Cayce what was wrong with him and how he could get well, and that became the first reading. And then the hypnotist said, if you can do this for yourself, maybe you can do it for other people. And he was able to, and that's really how it started. So fast forwarding to 1940, what would happen is someone generally would have, let's say it was a health problem. They'd write in, say they'd been to their doctor, they'd been to the Mayo Clinic, whatever it might be. They would ask Edgar Cayce to tell what was wrong with them and how they could get well. All he would be given, because the secretary would set up all the appointments, he would be given the name and address of a person and the time for the reading. So he would put himself to sleep, he said, like he did when he went under for that hypnosis, and when his wife, who would be sitting next to him, saw his eyes start to flutter, she would give him the suggestion of the person he was supposed to find, tune into, and everything. And his secretary, Gladys Davis, who I actually got to know, she was still working there when I started. And he would start to talk, and he would say, yes, we have the body, and he would begin a health reading by giving such things as blood pressure, temperature, what was going on in the various organs. Very often he would talk about how the person got sick to begin with, and very often he would talk about how they could get well. On occasion, he even recommended doctors they could go to, doctors he had no conscious knowledge of while awake. And on many occasions, he'd say things like, the person's forgotten their reading. For example, he's on a bus coming across town, he's late, we'll wait. And he'd wait for the person to get there and then proceed to give the readings. And then later on, all that would be sent to the person. And they'd say, I got stuck in traffic. I knew I had a reading, but, Cayce was right. So he is what we now know to be probably the most talented remote viewer of all time, that somehow he could tune into something at a distance, he could see it, describe it as though he was there, even the internal workings of the human body. And then that information would be sent to the individual, and then we, whenever possible, have followed up with those people throughout the years in terms of what Mr. Cayce said and what transpired after that.
So would he stay awake at night? Did he have any type of insomnia so that he could do these readings during the day?
Well, it was a different kind of sleep in a way. It would you might think of it as kind of a meditative sleep, a meditative state. Very often, while he was giving a reading, he would wake up and say he had part of his mind was actually having a dream while he was giving the reading, and then he would explain what he had dreamed, and they'd say what he had said in the reading. But it wasn't the same as going to sleep exactly. On a couple of occasions, if his wife didn't catch him in time, right when his eyelid started to flutter, he would go to sleep and then would not be giving a reading.
I got you. Now, would he remember everything? So everything was alive and conscious?
Absolutely nothing. And at first, he was worried that he didn't know how this worked. He was worried he might say something that would hurt someone or make someone sick, and so the first physician, Wesley Ketchum, assured him that he wouldn't do any kind of treatment that would be harmful. And then in it was either 1902 or 1904, something happened that I think even Ketchum was a little worried about. There was this very heavy man named George Dalton who had been injured on a construction site in Kentucky. A brick wall had fallen on his leg and crushed the kneecap, and he was in a wheelchair. Doctors told him he would never walk again. He came to Cayce and Ketchum, and while asleep, Cayce recommended a procedure of basically putting the knee back in place and hammering it in place with some nails from the construction site. And Ketchum had never heard of such a thing, but the Dalton said, I can't do what I do if I can never walk again, so he wanted to try. And they went ahead and did it. And now, of course, we know that's setting a bone, but at the time it was unheard of. So that was probably the first time I think Cayce was worried that something would go wrong. And then later on, when his wife got tuberculosis, he was kind of worried that some of the treatment would harm her. But the doctors told him there was no other hope, and they followed the treatment, and she got well. So it just happened that so often what he said just helped people that he became more and more certain that it was, he was not going to hurt anyone. And then later on, as he got older, he started to have more psychic experiences in the waking state, so that by toward the end of his life, he could see auras all the time, which basically are the colored halos, let's say, around people.
Right. Today, James Randi with his, $1 million psychic challenge thing.
Yeah.
What do you think? You think Edgar would take his $1 million?
That's a hard question. I'm certainly in favor of skeptics, but I think there are people who call themselves as skeptics that are not at all skeptic. They're totally disbelievers. And I think there's a difference between being skeptical and wanting to be shown something or have something proved to you and being totally against it and wanting to debunk it. That said, the challenge with trying to get scientific evidence sometimes for intuition is the way intuition best operates is contrary to some of the scientific standards. For example, probably many of your listeners have heard of the Zen or intuition cards, which are essentially one's a plus sign, one's a square, one's a star, circle, wavy lines. And what you try to do is you have people tune into what card is going to come up next in a random draw. Mm-hmm. Well, there are some people who can do that, but the best psychics, and I would put Edgar Cayce in this category as well, say that their intuition works on empathy, that somehow if they can get an empathetic connection with the person, really want to help that person, and that person in turn really wants to be helped, that somehow that heart-to-heart connection with another human being is what makes intuition possible for them. Well, there's no heart-to-heart connection with the Zener card, and the Zener card doesn't really care if you guess the right card.
Sure.
So that's one of the challenges with trying to document that kind of psychic ability. I have long suggested that what really needs to happen is you get a group of 25 people who have every kind of problem, whether it's a psychological issue, the loss of a loved one, financial problems, health problems, and line up each of those 25 people with a standard professional, whether it be an accountant or a psychologist or a doctor to help them, and then line up those same 25 people with a qualified psychic and ask the person at the end of the experiment which one of those two was the most helpful. And I'm pretty confident that the psychic's not going to do too badly in that kind of a setup.
So the first question, or the first email that came in, which was this afternoon.
Okay.
I'm just going to read it to you directly, and little lengthy, but always to the point. Okay, this comes in from Renee. She says, "Thank you. This is to you. Thank you." I'm all shook up. Thank you for your important work that you are doing with ARE. My aunt and I have both been greatly helped by Cayce's work in the organization's preservation, publication, and publicizing of it. And she says, number one, last year I emailed Egyptian Antiquities Minister Zahi Hawass in reference to the as yet undiscovered chamber under the Sphinx right paw, as described by Cayce. he assured me that there were, nothing underneath the paw. No such chamber has been found. Do you think it is possible that the chamber actually was discovered but has been suppressed?
Well, we know for a fact, based on, ARE has sponsored research in places like Egypt, places like Bimini, and places like Yucatan over the years. And we've actually worked with Dr. Hawass personally on a number of occasions. He may not like me to say that, but we have. In fact, on one occasion, he needed a drill to help. They were replacing some of the city waterways around the Giza Plateau, and he needed a very expensive drill, and we offered to buy it and ship it to him. It was about $10,000 if he would drill at a right angle underneath the Sphinx for us, and he did on the sly. So I will say that in 1997, a group of ARE people used sonar technology and found an anomaly under the right paw of the Sphinx that measured about 25 feet by 40 feet in length, and that is about where Cayce said you would find the Hall of Records. The Egyptian authorities since that time have basically said it is a natural rock formation and not an anomaly, and there's nothing there, which is fine, but there have been a number of things that suggest there is something there beneath the Sphinx, and there is something there on the plateau. What it is, we couldn't say. Cayce said what it was a record of the Atlantean civilization, which seems a little far-fetched maybe, but as far as Egypt is concerned, it's not there. But I do think it is there, and a time will come when Cayce's proved right.
Well, that's one of his most, famous and popular predictions and prophecies.
It is, but there's others that, for example, in the 1930s, he talked about, and remember, people didn't say, tell us about what's under the Sphinx.
Yeah,
they wouldn't have that kind of a question.
Kevin, that's where I need to cut you off for one second, because that's exactly, so let me, before you get into that, so let's just back up, because that's where we're going right now. And I don't mean to be, I'm not in any way trying to be impolite, but when when the Sphinx revelation came out, he wasn't speaking for somebody else. He wasn't doing somebody else's reading, was he? How did that come to him? And then let's talk about some other ones. But the Sphinx paw one specifically, did that just come out of thin air? Does anybody know? What was he talking about? What was his secretary doing at that time? And how did this just pop out and come about?
Well, can I answer it in two different ways?
Sure, go ahead. Go ahead.
He gave lots of readings about ancient Egypt. There's approximately almost 1,000 readings that mention ancient Egypt. And the reason that he did that was approximately 2,000 people who came to him were interested in the topic of reincarnation. And in going back and tracing their past lives, he talked about Egypt. And so, for example, I can give you something he said that we know absolutely is true. He said on 3 occasions in these readings, talking to people who had been in Egypt in the Sahara area, that at that time, back around 10,000 BC, the Nile had a different course, and that it actually flowed over the Sahara Desert and emptied into the Atlantic Ocean. Well, that's far-fetched. No one would believe it. That just doesn't seem to make sense. We all know how the Nile flows. Well, fast forward to 1986, and when the Skylab was circling around the globe taking shuttle imagery of the planet, they discovered that there was a dried riverbed across the Sahara, and it appeared that the Nile had changed its course over thousands of years, and it once had flown westward and emptied into the Atlantic Ocean. That's exactly what Cayce said 55 years before that. So very often when some of these things would come up, it was just kind of like a casual aside. Then when he was talking to somebody about the past. In terms of some of the information on the paw of the Sphinx, there was some questions related to whether or not there was the pyramid meant anything. And Cayce talked about the fact that the pyramid was essentially a tool for prophecy, and that somehow you could measure the passageways within the pyramid and get itemized events in the events of humankind by measuring basically through a pyramid inch, is what it later came to be called. And it's during that discussion that he talks about what the Atlanteans had done, how they had helped to build the pyramid, why the Sphinx was built, what was hidden beneath the Sphinx, and that's really where it came out early on.
During that period, Egypt and the Roaring Twenties and King Tut and everything else that was going on, and fashion and design. Do you think that had some type of influence on it from everybody else that was flooding in, or not, actually?
Well, keep in mind there were not a whole lot of pictures, and most of the monuments were not uncovered. Much of Egypt was buried in sand up through so there wasn't a whole lot of things to see. But as you say, the Howard Carter experience, people who were wealthy, handfuls of people would get to go to Egypt, and so it had a lot of romantic notions associated with it. But I think most of the information on Egypt is truly connected to people's interest in Egypt because of their own past lives. And in fact, on several occasions, Cayce suggested that anyone who became intimately involved with the organization ARE was essentially picking up the same connection they had once had with the same work when he had been doing a similar thing 10,000 years ago in Egypt, and that it was essentially a continuation of the same kind of connection with the work.
Did he ever make it to Egypt, or did he basically just stay in Virginia Beach?
He did not make it to Egypt. He did travel throughout much of the country for a long time looking for financing for the hospital that eventually got built in Virginia Beach, Virginia. But the farthest he ever went was Bimini off the coast of Florida, in part because Cayce had said that Bimini was the uppermost reaches of what was left of Atlantis. There were some people interested in building a resort down there and had taken him down there to be with them, but he never went any further than the United States and Bimini.
Okay, so before I cut you off so rudely, you started to tell us about some other prophecies and visions that he had besides the paw. So take us back to that.
Okay. Prophecies in general, right?
Well, it was you that was going to say Jimmy.
That seems like
I'm not the psychic here, man.
All right. What I was going to say is that oftentimes there's most of the prophecies, quote unquote prophecies that we have copies of are like personal prophecy. He would be giving a reading to someone, and then he would talk about what they would be like or what would come about. So let me give you a couple examples of a personal prophecy.
Go.
One kind of humorous, one kind of interesting. There was a gentleman who his name was Colonel Bill Starling. He was a member of the White House Secret Service staff. He had worked for 5 presidents, Wilson, Harding, Coolidge, Hoover, and Roosevelt. And he was getting ready to retire. And he was wondering if his life story, working with 5 presidents, would be of interest. And so he had a friend of his named David Kahn, who he'd grown up with, and he called David, who was a businessman in New York, and said, I'm really wondering if I should write my life story. And David had become an enthusiast of the Edgar Cayce material, and he said, well, why don't we get a reading from Edgar Cayce? So Edgar Cayce gave a reading. He said that it would become a bestseller, that it would be published by Simon & Schuster, and that it would be written by Tom Segru. And that was basically, the content of a multiple-page reading. Well, kind of excited about that, at the time of the reading, Dave Kahn had come down to Virginia Beach, so he gets back, finally gets up to New York, comes out of the train station and hails a cab. And Dave Kahn actually told this story on the Monitor television program years ago. We have a clip of it. And he hails a cab, and there's all these people standing around the cab. He sees another businessman standing next to him. He says, you want to share a cab? The guy says, sure. So they get in, and the guy rolls up his sleeves. He says, Schuster's my name. And he says, you wouldn't be of Simon & Schuster, would you? He said, yes, I'm Maxwell Schuster. And he says, you're going to publish a book for us. He said, what's the book? And Dave Kahn says, well, it's not written yet. He says, who's the writer? He said, he doesn't know about it yet. It's Tom Segru. And he said, well, what's it about? And so he proceeded to tell this story about, he'd just gotten a reading from Edgar Cayce. It was about Bill Starling. Tom Segru, who was a writer for a newspaper at the time, was going to write it, and it would be a bestseller. Well, actually, Maxwell Schuster published the book, and it sold over 250,000 copies.
Now, wouldn't Schuster have then gone to Cayce himself and said, okay, all right, how's my company going to do in 50 years? And did anybody ever approach Edgar about just that? You know, money, the stock market, the World Series. I mean, did any of this stuff not only get brought to him, but what did he, you know, how did he react to it?
Well, there were good stories and bad stories. I mean, the Morton Blumenthal, who was a young Jewish stockbroker, he was only in his 20s and he had a seat on the New York Stock Exchange. He got hundreds of readings from Edgar Cayce, many about business, stocks, everything like that. And so, yes, there were people like Morton who were helped. In fact, Morton was one of several people who was asking about business years before the stock market crash, and Cayce warned people as early as 1925, and he specifically named 1929 as the year of the great financial crash. So, yes, people were helped. The challenge for Cayce was that early on, his father, who nicknamed the Squire, had kind of the same idea on his own, that he wanted to know if his son could help him win at the horse race track. But he knew his son would not do that because he probably figured it wouldn't be fair. So what the Squire had done was, when Edgar Cayce was giving a reading on health, just before he'd wake up, the Squire would ask for gaming tips on the nearby horse track or certain things, and Cayce would give an answer. And the Squire would go make a bet he'd win at the track. And Cayce started noticing that he had these horrible headaches after giving a reading whenever his father was present. And it was just like a slamming headache, and he didn't know why. And he came to find out his father was getting all these readings on the sly about making money, and it was because of that he insisted that from then on his wife had to be present for a reading. And so she became the conductor for the bulk of all the readings we have.
So did he just, put the brakes on anything that had to deal with money, or
anything that had to do with money from gambling or a get-rich-quick scheme, something like that? But in terms of people did come to him for business advice. He did give readings to people about inventions. He did help people about their plans for. He gave lots of people in the Norfolk, Virginia Beach area insights on the future of the area. When he was alive in Virginia Beach, Virginia Beach was a small, essentially fishing community that had about 300 full-time residents when the family first arrived. And he talked about how the city would eventually become one of the largest resort cities on the East Coast, that the Norfolk area would become one of the major seaports on the East Coast. And this was all science fiction. But today, Virginia Beach, Virginia is actually the largest city in the state of Virginia. We have 450,000 people. And Norfolk is second or third in terms of the largest seaports on the east, next to New York and Philadelphia. So he definitely knew things, and people who followed his advice, the regular business advice, tended to do okay.
With if he got headaches for doing the wrong thing, did he feel good when he did the right thing? Did his health improve? Did he feel better? Was there a skip in his step?
I think that he felt best when he realized he had helped a child somehow, or that when a young person had been made well, or that people who were on their last hope had come and benefited. On one occasion, there was the reason he came to Virginia Beach, Virginia, was the Morton Blumenthal, this young Jewish stockbroker, offered to finance the hospital building and built at the time a $150,000 hospital, which, in 1930 was a large sum, right across from the Atlantic Ocean. And that building is still one of the buildings on our property. But he built this hospital, and one of the early patients was a 17-year-old girl who had been to the Mayo Clinic. She had been all over the place, and doctors had diagnosed a condition that she was having as one of her hip bones was eroding they thought it was cancerous. She was becoming a cripple, and other doctors had told her parents that it was terminal and that there was no hope. And they came to the Cayce Hospital as a last resort. And after just a few readings and several weeks treatment, she was cured of the condition. And it was the Zentgraf family. And the Zentgrafs then became strong supporters of the Cayce work, got lots of their friends involved in New York and D.C. And so, but I think helping this young woman was like a highlight for him. There was another young woman early on in Kentucky that he helped. A child had constant like epileptic seizures. It wasn't epilepsy, and basically her mind had stopped developing. And Cayce gave a reading and talked about how when this child was about 3 or 4, she had fallen from the carriage and hit her spine, and he recommended osteopathic adjustments be given in a certain way. So they got an osteopath. The osteopath gave the adjustments. Cayce gave a reading, told the osteopath he had given them wrong, and re-outlined the treatment. They did the treatment again, and the girl identified a doll that she had once had from several years earlier. They kept up with the treatment, and within a few weeks, her mind had continued to develop right to where it was supposed to be again. So I think stories like that, where he helped someone who was a hopeless case or reached out to someone who had no hope, was what really made him happy.
How were his finances back then? When all of this was going on, certainly he could have commanded a premium, for his services, and and especially when it comes to health. How did he deal with that, and did he charge, and where did the money go?
Edgar Cayce personally always had a hard time with finances. He never had enough money. Although he had been offered, the founder of the Denver Post, for example, had offered to pay him an enormous sum, basically make him very wealthy, if he would wear a turban and go around giving readings to all the elite people in Denver. And Cayce refused, saying that was not what he was supposed to be doing. So when he gave readings, he never turned away someone who couldn't afford a reading. And actually, we do much of the same thing today. If someone wants to be a member of ARE, even though it's only $39 online or $59 through the mail, if they want to be a member but can't afford it, we'll give them a membership. We send out 10,000 books a year free to prisoners, spread entirely by word of mouth. Prisoners write in and say, I really want to know about meditation or about how to work with relationships and how to discover my soul's purpose here in prison. We send that all out free. Well, Cayce started this by saying, no one will ever be turned away if they need help. And so he really had a hard time making ends meet. He also had some personal challenges. Is one of the office staff who used to work with him, and I knew this person before he passed away, I used to say if he had $20 in his hand and all at once thought, we could sure use a new peach tree in the yard, he'd go buy the peach tree and forget about everything else he was going to spend the money on. So he wasn't the best money manager, but he had a kind heart, and he was willing to help anybody who needed to be helped.
The facility that you have now and the way that ARE is run today, the same philosophy that he had back then, not for profit.
We're not for profit, right?
But you're the CEO, so you make sure that.
We're not for profit, but we can't lose money. We have to break even.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. So you have that sensibility about you today.
Right, and so I think Edgar Cayce would be blown away by the way the work has changed in terms of the cost. When he was alive, they had this fundraiser, and they thought, if they could only raise $30,000, they could support the work in perpetuity, like an endowment.
Right.
Well, today, ARE spends $30,000 a day, $30,000 every single business day. And where does that money come from? Well, essentially 4 different sources. We bring in about $2.5 million a year from publishing. We publish books, all kinds of books. We have regular books through retail outlets, through our own store, online, ebooks. So about $2.5 million from publishing. We bring in about $2.5 million from fees. We do conferences in Virginia Beach. We do conferences all around the country. We do international tours. We have 2 schools. We have Atlantic University that has a master's degree program in transpersonal studies. We have a massage school that trains people how to work with the principles of health and holism in the readings and have a career. So all that is considered fees. We bring in about $2.5 million that way. We bring in about $1.5 million in memberships. People want to be a member, and so they can spend $39 or $59. Go to edgarcayce.org, and all the information's there. And then we bring in about $2.5 million a year in contributions. We're a nonprofit that was set up in 1931, educational nonprofit, and lots of people who have been helped by the readings, whether it's health or understanding their mission in life, or improving their attitudes and emotions, or changing their disposition to be more positive, whatever it might be. A lot of people become connected to the work and want to help us through contributions.
My producer just said to me that you're wavering away from your handset. So,
okay.
Yeah, oh, there you go. Now see, wow. Yeah, perfect.
I'm back. All right,
yeah,
great.
There you go. So I'm walking down the street. I'm in Virginia Beach. My toes are in the sand. I'm not a member, but I've got the Cayce urge, and I want to go read. I can just walk in and head into the library and pull down a book and start reading?
You can. In fact, we are one of the busiest tourist attractions in Virginia Beach. Sometimes I think it's because we're free, but you can just walk right in 7 days a week, go to our library. We have audio-video presentations on Mr. Cayce. But you don't have to be in Virginia Beach to do that. You can go to edgarcayce.org. We've got almost 100 programs on our YouTube channel that you can watch. We have over 3,000 pages on the web. You can research virtually any issue you might have or question, and it's all up there. So we do a lot of things in Virginia Beach. We have if you're in Virginia Beach, you can come get a massage. We have some of the best massage you can imagine. And we have visitor activities. We have a meditation garden.
Well, you're making me want to go there now. Let's get back to get back to Cayce. When you obviously you sit and read a lot of this, and there's over 14,000 readings. On average, I'm just going to take a guess here, but 45 minutes to an hour was a reading for him. That's a lot of words in 45 minutes. I feel sorry for the stenographer back then because somebody wasn't, recording. Somebody's writing and doing this in real time. But take me to some of the most fantastical moments where you're sitting there reading. You may or may not have a direction in front of you, but you're just reading. Take me to a couple of moments for you where you just could not, wrap your head around what you were reading.
Well, boy, it's almost hard to pick.
Exactly.
All right, I'll give you one. On one occasion, he was giving a health reading, and I can't even really remember what the issue was about. But at the end of the health reading, he did not wake up, and they gave him the suggestion to wake up, and he would not wake up. And finally, there, asleep, he said, "Here with the Master at the Last Supper, see what they had to eat." And he goes on for 2 pages describing the Last Supper, the appearance of each of the apostles, the appearance of Jesus, what's about to take place, and it is an incredibly beautiful description of the events of the Last Supper, and it just came out of nowhere. So that was one occasion.
Okay, well that's a tease right there. Okay, so what did he see? What was everybody wearing? What were they eating? I mean,
I'm going to have to pull up the reading to get exactly what he said, and I'm happy to do that.
That is absolutely incredible. And so this was a vision, and so he didn't know that this was coming to him.
No, he didn't. He was there asleep on the a couch and just started talking.
And so, I'm very rarely at a loss for words, but I didn't think you were going to go there. And
well, you just asked me to think of one real quick.
That's absolutely I didn't know about this, and I've done an awful lot of reading over the last 35, 40 years on Edgar Cayce, and I've never heard this. And, well, that's also an example of when you have 14,000, cataloged readings there, that's an enormous volume of stuff. And so for any one person, for me to sit there and try to read one or two of those a day, you would spend years and years doing it and never get to this.
Yeah, well, I found the reading whenever you're ready.
Okay, go ahead.
So this reading was given in June of 1932. So every reading basically says when it was given, who was present, and it says given after suggestion was given 3 times for Edgar Cayce to wake up. So Cayce begins. The Lord's Supper, here with the Master. See what they had for supper. Boiled fish, rice, leeks, wine, and loaf. One of the pitchers in which it was served was broken. The handle was broken, as was the lip the same. The whole robe of the Master was not white, but pearl gray, all combined into one, the gift of Nicodemus to the Lord. The better looking of the 12, of course, was Judas, while the younger was John, oval face, dark hair, smooth face, only one with the short hair. Peter the rough and ready, always that of a very short beard, rough and not altogether clean, while Andrews is just the opposite, very sparse, but inclined to be more long on the side and under the chin, long on the upper lip. His robe was always near gray or black, while his breeches were striped, while those of Philip and Bartholomew were red and brown. The Master's hair is red, inclined to be curly in portions, yet not feminine or weak, strong, with heavy piercing eyes that are blue or still gray. His weight would be 170 pounds. Long tapering fingers, nails well kept, long nail, though, on the little finger. Merry, even in the hour of trial, joke, even in the moment of betrayal. The sack is empty. Judas departs.
Really?
Yeah. And he says, the last is given of the wine and loaf. He lays aside his robe, which is all as one piece, girds the towel about his waist, which is dressed with linen that is blue and white, rolls back the folds, kneels first before John, James, then to Peter, who refuses. Then the dissertation as to he that would be the greatest would be servant of all. And now comes it is finished. They sing the 91st Psalm. He that dwelleth in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. He is a musician as well, for he uses the harp. They leave for the garden. And then that was the end of the reading.
Wow.
So that was one of those instances where I thought, what have I just come across?
Yeah, man.
And it comes up, and recently, as in about 3 years ago, I had been looking for something else. I think it was related to vibrations. Cayce talked a lot about how essentially, he talked about what quantum physics is coming to now, that essentially there is only one element in the universe. Some people might want to call it God stuff,
right?
Whatever it might be. And he talks a lot about that. And so I was looking up some information on vibrations and came across some of the material, and he starts talking about the illusion of time. And so because the readings are searchable, you can search various words and phrases and things, I just started doing a search on time. And I was, keep in mind, I've been involved with this for 40 years. I was blown away to find that there were probably 100 references to the illusion of time in the Edgar Cayce readings, and came to a very different understanding of how time actually works, and how, from Cayce's perspective, there really isn't a past, a present, a future, but instead there's only the movement of consciousness along a timeline, and that ultimately the past, present, and future are all happening at the same moment in time. And to me, that was just, I'm still trying to get my mind about that. But that was another moment when I thought, wait a minute, this is really interesting.
Did you ever skip ahead and just have a week's worth of Egyptian readings or Atlantean colors?
Yeah, I did. Part of my research has depended on what article I'm writing or what I'm really interested in. So when I compiled a book on everything Edgar Cayce said about ancient Persia, I had a very strong interest in that, just because that story fascinated me. He had talked about the fact that about 8,000 years ago he had been a desert nomad, that he had been in a battle, that while in the battle he had had a near-death experience that had enabled his mind to leave its body, and that he said in the reading it was because of that lifetime his mind in this lifetime could leave its body and he could do remote view and give psychic information. So there's about 600 readings on Persia, and I pulled them all together into a little booklet we used to give to members. And that story just fascinated me. And it was in the process of actually pulling that together that I had one of what I would say was one of my strongest past life experiences, where I actually saw myself as a dream interpreter in that city in ancient Persia. And the thing that most amazed me about that experience is I have literally probably interpreted 10,000 dreams in this lifetime. Easy, 10,000. Mm-hmm. And it's oftentimes I compare it to being like a trained dog. Somebody tells you a dream and you're supposed to give them the answer. But in this experience, I actually saw myself being paid for interpreting dreams. And that blew my mind because I never imagined such a thing. It used to be a job.
Right. Well, okay, now I'm going to put on my devil's advocate skeptic hat just a little bit
go for it.
And just roll this past you. And again, I'm such a red Edgar Cayce guy but I'm just gonna play another role here. So just
okay.
Go with me. Was there when he's dealing with Persia, when he's dealing with Atlantis and in Egypt, and not only that, but the medical aspects too, was there ever an opportunity for him to go and read, because he's referencing names and objects and colors and clothes and objects, did he ever go and read history? Was he influenced by anything else, or did this stuff literally come to him on subjects that he knew nothing about? And did he ever get busted for having a history book under his pillow, if you know what I mean?
Right. Well, no, he was not well read, and he when asked, he would ask in the readings where he got his source of information. He described as his source of information as what he called the akashic records. Basically, the term akasha comes from it's a Sanskrit word which means boundless space. Cayce suggested that there is this etheric energy field around the earth, and that anything that ever transpires in the earth is written in this energy field, and that he could read it. Well, that energy field is referred to in the Bible as the Book of Life, or God's Book of Remembrance. And as unusual as that may sound, probably most of your listeners have heard about a near-death experience where somebody dies, they have a life review, they see their whole life flash before them, and then they're eventually revived before they actually make the complete transition. Well, what happens during a life review is you're actually tuning into your own akashic record. You're getting to see the record of your own life journey from at least this time around. Somehow Cayce was able to read that information for any of your incarnations, and that's where he got his information from. So it's a source of information that is written for every single soul, and it was something Cayce said we all have access to. We just don't know that we have access to. And it comes up, for example, when you meet someone for the very first time and you don't like that person and you don't know why, or you meet someone for the very first time and you have a very strong connection with that person, and where does that come from? And essentially, it's we pick up our relationships with people exactly where we left them off.
There's no, for him and for you too, you wrote a book on this. I mean, there's no scientific evidence for the Akashic records for the obvious things. It's there for everybody individually. Was he able to tap into an Akashic record for historical data too, such as there's no Akashic record really, for streets in Bemini, if you know what that's a physical thing. That's not a human being. So what Akashic record was he tapping into for that? For the Persian Wars you were just talking about?
Well, he was tuning into people's life stories. Remember, he's given 600 of the 2,000 people who had life readings. 600 were given experiences in Persia, and so in the course of giving basically a life review for each of those people, a story gets woven together about the civilization that was occurring at the time.
So
that's where he got.
Okay, and then let's back up. So when we're dealing with Egypt and the Sphinx and so forth, was he able to do a life experience with? Because I haven't read 14,000 readings.
Okay.
Well, neither of you, actually. We were talking about that earlier. I can't imagine how much time that would take.
I've never sat down and read number 1 through number 14,306. I probably have read elements of all of them, and I've definitely read from beginning to end of thousands of them, but I have never sat down and read every one of them from beginning to end.
So when he's doing a life reading for, I'm going to be specific, for somebody, an Egyptian at the time of the pyramids, was he ever able to figure out how they built those, the Great Pyramid?
He suggested that they had discovered how to make stone float through the air. He said that it was the same principle in which metal would float on water, that somehow it has to do with displacement somehow, that somehow it's possible with energy displacement to make a stone move in the air. I don't know how it's possible, but that's basically what he was talking about.
And that's way ahead of time. In other words, we talk about that kind of stuff today, but this is 2014, and back then the knowledge of the Giza Plateau, was minimal. It was growing because there was a lot of fascination there, and you're right, Howard Carter and everything that was going down at that time, but 50 years before that, Giza was, an anomaly that nobody knew very much about at all. And so for him to come to those kind of conclusions so early on, I just find it fascinating. And how did let's stay on the subject for a second, if you don't mind. How about the Sphinx? How did he say that actually came to be?
Well, again, this is going to sound a little far-fetched, perhaps. And just so you know, I've actually been to Egypt 6 times. We do tours around the world. Probably the person associated with ARE who's been there more than anyone else is John Van Auken, who's written extensively on Egypt and has been there, I would guess, 30 times probably. So he would be the best person to ask this question, but I will answer it to the best of my ability. Cayce suggested that the Sphinx was put there by the Atlanteans, and basically it's a creature that looks like half man, half lion, for example. And he suggested it was to be a marker, as a reminder of those creatures that were half human and half something else. That he suggested that prior to 10,000 BC, that there were creatures in the earth that caused us to have all the various myths about half man, half beast, the Cyclops, the various creatures of mythic lore, Cayce said, had a basis in fact, and that the Sphinx had been placed there as a reminder because after the Egyptian experience, none of those creatures existed anymore.
And what's amazing about that statement, and I just needed you to say that out loud, when we have, actual archaeologists now like Robert Schoch changing the date of the Sphinx and suggesting that it could be, 10,000 years old, or, 7,000 years old, 10,000 years old, 5,000 years older, 7,000 years older than is, the ordinary orthodox, archaeology, what they're going to tell you in textbooks. But that's now, today, with our knowledge of, the erosion on the Sphinx and how we study rock now, today.
Right.
But he was saying that 70, 80 years ago?
He was saying it without ever having been there, ever having read about it, anything. And yes, he placed it at about 10,400 BC.
And they're saying, and like I said, Robert Schoch and Bovell and those guys are saying, 10,200. 10,000, that's an amazing. It's kind of hard to. Even James Randi, I think, would have issues with this, where he would have to stop and pause. Now let's get to Atlantis, and we may swing this back around to Egypt because I just find it so fascinating. But how did take us back to the first Atlantean readings, and how did that start to come to him too as well, and why? What was the catalyst there? The progenitor, if you will.
Well, let me take it back to the first past life reading. How about that?
Okay, good.
That's more of the inroad. He had been giving, essentially between 1901 and about 1923, he had been giving essentially mostly health readings. People would have health problems. That's what he was really focusing on. And then in 1923, a printer from Ohio asked basically for an astrological reading. Cayce didn't know anything about astrology really, but he said he would try. And he basically gave an astrology overview of this man and his life. And during the end of that reading, he said the curious statement, essentially stating that many of the same inclinations and conditions that were going on in the man's life, this printer's life, were similar to the time when he had once been a monk. And that sentence opened up a whole new question of inquiry, because the astrologer, the printer, was familiar with reincarnation. So he asked for a reincarnation reading. Years later, Cayce's secretary Gladys Davis went back to the readings and actually found references to reincarnation as early as 1911, but nobody understood what he was talking about, and so they basically had been missed. But that was really the first instance. And so the printer from Ohio got another reading, and during that reading, Cayce told him that he and Cayce had actually once worked together before in ancient Persia, and that in ancient Persia there was still evidence of their work together, and that there were still remnants of Cayce's bones, and he gave that those bones could be found, I think it's 7.25 miles from present-day Shustar in Iran. And that opened up another door. We get readings then on Persia. And so it just started building from that. People would ask about, well, was I in Persia or was I in Atlantis? And then the thing just started growing. Interestingly enough, fast forward to the 1970s, we had a couple named Elsie and Bill Seacrest, who were international speakers for ARE. We have Edgar Cayce centers in 38 countries, and traveled around the world. And she had been in Iran, and she actually went to, following some of the suggestions Cayce gave in the readings, she went to what Cayce called the city in the hills and the plains, and she believed she had found the location of this ancient city he had talked about. And she had friends high up in the government, and she even got a Japanese archaeological team ready to start digging, and it was shortly thereafter that the Shah fell. And so actually, in one of our books, we have noted the longitude and latitude of where the city is supposed to be, but it'll probably be a long time before any of us get there.
Have you gone to Google Maps and tried to see satellite? Okay, what do you see?
I have. Desert.
Can you give all of us right now worldwide what the longitude and latitude reading numbers are?
I can find it while we're talking. Yes, I have to.
I would love to get the flood of email in here, because everybody would.
All right, keep talking. I'm pulling it up here.
Okay, while he's pulling it up, I was actually I have one of the recordings of one of his earliest reincarnation readings, and this is what it says, and it's just utterly fascinating. And I'm quoting here. In this, we see the plan of development of those individuals set upon this plane, meaning the ability to enter again into the presence of the Creator and become a full part of that creation. Insofar as this entity is concerned, this is the third appearance on this plane, and that's an amazing statement. This one as the monk, as you said earlier. We see glimpses in the life of the entity now as we're shown in the monk, in this mode of living. The body is only the vehicle ever of that spirit and soul that waft through all times and never remain the same. That's for somebody that wasn't well read or, educated and was a photographer. You know what I mean? That is
exactly.
That is some heavy verbiage, man. Heavy.
Well, basically from Cayce's premise, we are not physical beings. We are spiritual beings having a physical experience, and that in the readings he suggests that at some point in time, God turned us loose on the universe as a means of bringing divinity into the third dimension. That's why we're here, to somehow bring spirit into the earth. And I sometimes joke with the staff at ARE that, we're all employees for God, even if we don't know that. And some of us have forgotten to clock in, and some of us have forgotten that we're even supposed to be working for the divine. But that's why we're here, to somehow bring divinity into the earth. And that is something that comes up again and again in the Cayce material, that's one of the purposes of our life, to bring spirit into the earth.
And there's one other fascinating aspect to his writing and readings, which is, with other prophets, I'm not going to get sued, so I'll just say Nostradamus, as an example. You can interpret any of that any which way you want to, period. I'm sorry. I don't want to bum everybody out, but you know what I'm saying. Mm-hmm. Cayce, on the other hand, it's very direct. It's very direct. And that passage that I just read you only means one thing. That's it. There's no reading between the lines, so to speak. I just got an email that just made it through the producers and in here to me, which says that I have to read this to you right now, this came in from Demian, and it says, did he say, Kevin, by the way, did he say that Jesus had curly red hair and blue-gray eyes? I'm just confirming what I thought I heard.
Yes, that's what Cayce said.
Curly red hair and blue-gray eyes.
Inclined to be curly.
Oh, man.
That was the line used, inclined to be curly.
Okay.
And blue or steel gray eyes.
Okay, got it.
I have found the longitude and latitude if you're ready for it.
Okay, go ahead. I'm gonna get this going. What is it?
It was near latitude 32 north and longitude 48.7 degrees east in southern Iran. 32 degrees north and 48.7 degrees east in southern Iran.
Okay, I got it. Got it right here, everybody. There it is. 32 north, 48.7 degrees east in southern Iran. And I can't wait. And
you heard it here first.
Yeah, and I will. I'll forward you the more interesting. I'm telling you right now. Be prepared, Kevin. It's going to come.
Okay.
In. Okay. Now here you go. Another email. This is from Brad. It says, "Hi Jimmy, great show. I love the Cayce stuff. I'm a devil's advocate question. There is one specific provable prophecy that would stand scientifically. Oh, is there? Okay. He said, not rivers changing directions, which would not be considered provable. Something very specific where the skeptic has to say, okay, I believe this."
Well, I would definitely say that one of the reasons that for the last 40 years, ARE has been interested in research in Egypt or research in Bimini is because Cayce suggested that there would be found evidence for Atlantis in both of those places. And I feel like that discovering proof of a civilization that predates what most scientists would say was realistic would certainly bear credence for Edgar Cayce. I'll give you another date that I think is going to have relevance. I find it interesting that in August of 2017, there is a full solar eclipse right over Hopkinsville, Kentucky, which is where Edgar Cayce was born. And so I've been saying for several years now that I'm pretty confident that somewhere around August 2017, something's going to happen that puts Mr. Cayce right back up in the limelight.
Say that one more time. There's going to be...
Yeah, sure. There, if you can Google it, in August of 2017,
right,
there is a full solar eclipse happening over the United States, and it is happening right over Hopkinsville, Kentucky, which is the place Edgar Cayce was born. And this is a little podunk town in Christian County, Kentucky.
Right. And what is the? Did he expand on that?
He didn't say anything about it. I just feel like the person was asking about some kind of proof or something related to Edgar Cayce. My feeling is something is going to happen, whether it's a movie about Edgar Cayce's life or a prophecy or something that's going to put Mr. Cayce in the limelight in the next few years.
And that's as far as you want to go with it. Okay, I'm not going to drill you.
That's as far as I want to go with it right now.
Okay. Fair enough. And before I let any of this other stuff get too far away from us, and there's other stuff I want to talk about too, but I've got so many emails in front of me. So I'm just going to start from like the bottom and move up, and let's just see where they fall. Okay, so here we go. Cayce spoke about akashic records. Well, there you go. Would you say that this is the same thing as Jung's overmind?
I would say that the akashic records, Cayce would say, are very that each of us somehow has a throughway to the akashic records. He called that throughway the superconscious mind. The superconscious mind is very similar to what Jung called the collective unconscious, which is basically that collective consciousness in which we are all connected. So in that sense, I think that Cayce's version of the superconscious mind and Jung's version of the collective unconscious are both throughways to the akashic records. That's how I would answer that question.
Now, and it's a Sumerian word, and I don't know how much of Sumerian was out there in the early 1900s.
Right.
How did he stumble across it, or did he call it akashic, and did he make a Sumerian reference to it?
No, he called it the akashic records. He called it the akashic records.
That's again, calling James Randi. Okay, so this next, I'm serious. I mean, how else can you explain this away? And I'm trying to trip you up here, Kevin. I'm not doing a really good job of it. Okay, hi, Jimmy. I've had a couple of experience with an Andromedan in my ET experiences, and after these contacts took place, I got my monthly ARE newsletter. I had an active membership with them at that time. And in this particular newsletter was an article about a reading Cayce had done on the... Is that true? He did readings on Andromeda? Kevin?
He did readings in which he mentions various planetary configurations. I'm waiting to hear the punchline here.
I had to stop in the middle of it. I did not know about that. Upon reading it, my jaw dropped, well, just like yours and I just did. He described what I had experienced about that encounter and cosmic being. If Cayce's readings on ETs are pure nonsense, how could he do that as I have just described? Yes, it's all true. I have had to shake my head in amazement. He knew all about this 50 years ago. I was amazed. Okay, well, I guess it wasn't a question. It was more about a statement. Yeah, that 50 years prior, he described what he already knew. Yeah, okay, again, I find it fascinating. I really do. Okay, let's... what else did he say about Andromeda, though? Again, back then, what was known about Andromeda as being a star system?
Well, again, I'm actually looking to see what I can find. Again, he generally didn't talk about, okay, I have something interesting to tell you on Andromeda. It would come up because someone would ask for an astrological reading, or someone would ask for insights about something, and then it would come out as an aside. Cayce, for the most part, did not give readings on global situations, although those did come up. He gave readings for individuals. I was on the History Channel once when, this is just coming to mind, where someone wanted to know of a prophecy he had given that was really, impressive. And let me find it here. I have it right here. He talked about the build-up for World War II, and he even went on to name who would be involved. And it is right.
Okay, as you're pulling that up, it says, this is from another listener, 50 years ago, prior to, this is another prophecy that came true, and I'd like you to comment on this. 50 years prior to the fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989, Cayce stated that in the 1980s, northern portion of Europe would be changed, as in the twinkling of an eye. And goes on, having grown up in the Cold War era, after reading this prediction in the 1960s, I was always concerned that this would mean a nuclear war, or that possibly maybe a pole shift. Needless to say, I was very relieved after the wall fell, as one country after another quickly left the Iron Curtain to strive for something closer to democracy. Indeed, the map of Northern Europe changed in just a few months, which is a very short time historically. In other words, in the twinkling of an eye. And and see, the thing is with the way that Cayce had written that back then, there's no question about where he's talking about, and certainly, it's going to change. Well, that could mean anything, but he's specifically naming Northern Europe and twinkling of an eye, and there's no question about what went down in 1989. That seemed like it happened in a couple of days, not months.
So here's the one I was looking for. In 1935, early on in the year, a young man asked Cayce if he could describe affairs of an international nature. That was the phrase he used. This is what Cayce says. As to international affairs, this will make for the taking of sides by various groups and countries. This will be indicated by the Austrians, the Germans, and later the Japanese. And unless there is interference from what may be called the supernatural forces, the whole world, as it were, will be set on fire.
What year? What year?
1935.
That's...
And the next year, Hitler invaded the Rhineland. There was civil war in Spain. China and Japan went to war, and the ground was set for what would become World War II.
Well,
and
he's
then, of course,
specific.
The United States didn't enter until 1941.
Right, and he specifically says Austrian and drops Japan in that sentence.
Yeah, Austrians, Germans, and Japans, and unless there is interference from the supernatural forces, the whole world will be set on fire by militaristic groups.
Why wasn't there did nobody listen to him or take this serious?
Actually, that leads for a fascinating story. There was a man named Harmon Brough who was a PhD. He did his doctorate dissertation in the 1950s on Edgar Cayce, and he said he was present when in 1939, when it was Europe was at war, the United States hadn't entered the war, and they asked for a reading on whether or not the United States would ever enter the war.
Right.
I don't have it before me, but I can kind of paraphrase it. And basically, Cayce suggested that if the 20 people in that room began to pray every day and lived as they prayed, then the United States would not have to enter the war. And Harmon Brough said after the reading, rather than everyone saying, okay, now let's get together, how do we want to do this, it was, where do you think we will be attacked? I mean, everyone bought right into the fear part of it and just basically ignored what they had just heard.
Were there any politicians or private secret readings that were done that you know about now, but back then it was a little more clandestine?
We have anecdotal stories that Mr. Cayce gave readings for President Woodrow Wilson.
Right.
About the League of Nations.
Right.
Of which we have no copies of.
Right.
And that he gave readings for Franklin Roosevelt, of which we have no copies. But all we know is that Cayce went to D.C. on certain occasions, that he would not talk about what he was doing, and that we have no copies. The writer Sidney Kirkpatrick, who wrote the most recent biography, Edgar Cayce, an American Prophet, traced what he could from what evidence we have, and came up with some conjectures. But we have no evidence of those readings.
What about evidence of checking into a hotel, for instance? Any other historical data about his presence in D.C. at a specific time?
I've never pursued that. I mean, it would be interesting through the Freedom of Information Act and different things to see if there was any evidence that Cayce was at the White House.
Sure.
Like
I mean, everything was logged, and any visits, and formal or informal, everything was logged in and out. That's I've heard these rumors, and that's why I was asking you about that. Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, Cayce was actually very disappointed in the United States Congress because, Wilson's after World War I, President Wilson was really interested in coming up with a plan for the world that there would never again be a world war. And his idea was the League of Nations. And Cayce suggested that the Christ, the spirit of the Christ actually had set with Wilson during the discussions for the League of Nations. and most of the world bought into it. It was the United States Senate that turned it down, and it never happened. I mean, eventually a smaller version of it came up in terms of the United Nations. But Cayce believed that had we actually entered the League of Nations, we would have turned the tide and not necessarily had another world war.
Any other heads of state? Any references to anybody else around the world contacting him, or maybe remote?
Oh,
reading?
there were lots of personalities of the day who had readings. People who were famous. I mean, but nowadays some of those people who were famous then are not famous now. For example, Jesse Lasky, who was one of the founders of Paramount, was very interested in Mr. Cayce and had readings.
Wow, that's unbelievable. And on the record, or is that just again, No,
I've seen them. Yeah. So I mean, the readings are all the names have been pulled out for confidentiality. I will tell people, like for example, the readings number 294 are Edgar Cayce's readings on himself. So 294-1 would be the first reading Edgar Cayce gave to himself. 294-2 would be the second, things like that. But most of the names are still confidential.
So let's get to I want to talk dreams, and we talked about this earlier today, and we both, I wanted to try to get to that point. So, and I know that that is something that you're interested too. So let's go back. How did he do, and was he successful at interpreting dreams and what they meant?
He was an amazing dream interpreter. In fact, he gave approximately 900 dream interpretation readings. Most often, his wife would hold the person's dream in her hand, and without it ever being read, she would tell him to interpret the dream she was holding, and he would interpret it. And on about 6 occasions, there asleep on the couch, he says something like, the dreamer has forgotten a portion of their dream, and he would remind them what they had forgotten, and then he'd go ahead and interpret the whole thing, which is an amazing ability. But of the 900 readings, he was probably one of the first people in the Western world to really emphasize the importance of working with dreams for all people, not just in psychotherapy.
Okay, I need you to take me back and say that again.
Okay.
So I want you to understand. I want to understand what you just said. Okay. He was able to read like a deja vu of a deja vu and explain to them what their dream actually meant.
About 6 occasions he reminded somebody about a portion of the dream that they had apparently forgotten, and on 900 different occasions he interprets a dream. Most of the time he never ever hears the dream. He just interprets it.
That's okay. Now how how can you prove that? What I mean is that
okay. Let me put it this way.
Okay.
That the insights on dreams are so helpful that in fact I actually wrote a free app on dreams. If any of your listeners want to go to edgarcayce.org, we have an app store. There's a free, I think it's a 350-word free dream dictionary off of our site. You can get it as an app. But the Cayce information on dreams is so helpful that Cayce suggested you could get insights for every area of your life, whether it was your physical health, your relationships, your attitudes and emotions, your spiritual growth, and that material is truly helpful to people. I encourage people that if they have a question about their life, they can write out a question and they can dream on it and get an answer to that question.
How can you, or for instance, you, Kevin, how could you tell me about a section of a dream that I had forgotten about? And
well, I can't do that, but if you tell me a dream, I generally can help you, but I cannot tell you about a portion of a dream you've forgotten.
Okay. I'm just trying to swallow. I'm trying to get my head around this. But he was able to. Am I missing something? Okay, let me ask you direct. You're saying he told somebody about, reminded them of a part of a dream that they forgot.
Yes.
How? Explain. I don't get it. I don't get it.
I can tell you that I know of one other instance where that occurred. And in the Old Testament, the prophet Daniel is with Nebuchadnezzar, Nebuchadnezzar, and Nebuchadnezzar has the same experience. He is troubled by a dream, but he can't remember it. Daniel tells him what the dream was and then interprets it for him. That's the only other instance I've ever heard where someone could do that.
Deja vu.
Well, it's
no. I want to talk to you about that for a second. With deja vu, and I think all of us have it. Mm-hmm. And deja vu is an example of where a prophet, a prophetized, or prophesying, the act of seeing a prophecy, it adds weight to that. In other words,
let me explain from Cayce's perspective how most often that happens.
Okay.
Cayce would say that nothing of significance ever happens to us without it first being foreshadowed in a dream, and that at the higher levels of our consciousness, our mind is constantly calculating probabilities. So, for example, when you're asleep, your part of your mind is saying, okay, if Jimmy does this, this is the outcome. If Jimmy does this, this is the outcome. If he does this, this is the outcome.
Right.
Then the next morning you wake up, you don't remember your dreams, but all at once you go somewhere and you think, wait a minute, I've already been here. Or you start having a conversation and you think, wait a minute, I've already had this conversation. And we have an experience called deja vu. Cayce would say that most of those types of deja vu experiences are fragmentary dream recall, that we dreamed about a chain of events the night before based on, okay, I do this, here's the outcome. I dream about it. I don't remember my dreams because we're not culturally predisposed to write them down, but some part of my mind remembers it the next day, and I have this deja vu experience. That's really how it happens.
Well, what about when it's like, it's a word for word deja vu, where you just know as this. Okay.
It's the same experience.
And how do you? Okay, let's talk about dreams a little bit. When if I have a bad dream, if I have a nightmare, is that an indication of something? I mean, something terrifying. You wake up, you're sleep paralysis, you're out of your mind, you're terrified, cold sweats, scary thing. Is that an indication of something bad to come, or is it a warning? And
It can be a warning, but it can also simply be that your subconscious mind has been trying to get your attention, and you're not paying attention to it, and it's trying to bring you the same information over and over and over again, and we have a nightmare because we'll remember.
And okay, now I'm going to give you a recurring dream that I have all the time. I've read about these dreams happening to other people. So, but I've had it since I was a kid. I'm not going to make this a long story, but I'm walking up some stairs. The stairs are dark. It's a tunnel. And at the top of these stairs, for some reason, like pebbles come down these stairs, and they gain speed where they're shooting past me like a bullet by the time it gets down to the bottom. And I'm trying to get to the top of the stairs.
Okay.
What would something like that indicate?
Well, generally when I help people with the dream, I say, if I had the dream, this is what it would mean to me.
Okay.
It suggests to me that there's something, that some perception you have that as soon as you make some kind of progress, and probably as progress related to understanding your own spiritual belief system or understanding what you're supposed to be doing with your life, you're inundated with either questions or other problems or other issues that you didn't see coming when you started going down this path. So it's almost like the old one step forward, two steps back, that you make progress, okay, this is what I believe, and then all at once all these other questions come up. Or you make progress, boy, this is really going to be great for me, and then something else comes up. It's some kind of a learning experience related to you having faith in yourself is what I would say.
And how can you help when it comes to interpreting dreams? Can people do it themselves, or do they need to bring in a third party like yourself?
Well, I think that ultimately each one of us is our own best dream interpreter because we know about what's going on in our life. But I think the only thing I bring to the table is just having done it for so long. But I think ultimately everybody can be their own best dream interpreter.
And is it easy? What advice can you give to people that, and I find this really strange, people that don't remember their dreams?
Well, again,
I remember everything. I don't know if you do, but I can I can wake up and I can just sit there and go, wow, that was really cool. And I can sit and recall it.
Well, we get into habit patterns so that if we haven't remembered this because we haven't tried. So what you can do is you can change your routine, like you get up earlier, maybe a little earlier, set your alarm earlier, have a piece of paper or a pen by the bed and write down anything you do remember. But another thing that I often encourage people to do is to write out a question and to trade it with a friend or a spouse or your partner or whoever it might be, and dream for the other person. And sometimes we feel more invested in helping someone else than we do for ourselves. And you can really oftentimes get a dream that way.
No, explain that again. Dream for another person.
Yeah. So like, let's say I have a question about something going on in my life, and I write out that question and I give it to my wife, and maybe she writes out a question and gives me her question. And sometimes I do it where we don't even open the question and just dream on it and then write down whatever you got the next morning and share it with the person. And it can be a really interesting experience.
You're good, Kevin. I'm serious. You're tripping me up. You're doing good.
You know,
that's an amazing thought, and
it's amazing. I mean, you really can get great insights.
Okay, now, wow. What about I'm forgetting. I want to go in two different directions. What about something happy, or also death during a dream? There's always those two concerns. So let's address the happiness part of it first. Somebody's just having happy dreams, happy-go-lucky dreams. Is this a foreshadowing of something maybe not so good?
If you're having a happy dream, no. Generally, dreams contrast and correlate the events of the day and give you some sense of another way of looking at what's going on in your life. So if you're having a happy dream, generally it's a reflection of some positive thing going on in your life. Or if you've been having a really challenging time with life and you're depressed or you're worried or you're upset, sometimes your subconscious mind will give you a happy dream to help, buoy you up. Lots of times people have told me, I don't really remember my dreams. I don't know what they're good for. And all of us have had the experience of we go to depressed, anxious, or worried or upset, and yet we wake up the next day and we feel great and fine. And what has happened is our mind has come to some resolution, and we feel better even if we don't remember our dreams. But if we remember them, we'd even have a better experience with that. So I think that sometimes our dreaming happy things is to help us work through life situations. In terms of dreaming about death, it can simply be the end of something. It doesn't have to mean a literal death.
Is there any advice that you can give to amplify a dream or to ensure that you're going to have a good dream? I mean, should you eat like a heavy meal before you go to bed? Should you starve yourself before? Yeah, should you starve yourself before you go to bed?
No, I think you should. I think you should just be normal and just get a good night's sleep. And as you're drifting off to sleep, think about what it is that's going on in your life, or if you have a question in mind that you'd like to have an answer to, and see what happens.
Oh, what about reading before you go to bed?
I think it's great to, whether it's reading or watching TV or whatever. I mean, sometimes that imagery will creep into your dreams, but the dream itself will still have meaning apart from whatever it is you were just doing.
What about, let's talk about colors. What about if you're seeing colors while you dream? Oh, no, we didn't address death. You let that get past.
Well, I said that death can be simply the end of something or a change of something.
Okay, so not necessarily. Don't be afraid of dreaming.
Right, let me tell you a dream. I had this woman call me once that I'm thinking of the kid's name was Stacy. Okay, her daughter was about 5 years old. And this is a true story. Her daughter was about 5 years old and had been playing out really close to the curb, and a van had turned around the curve and hadn't seen the child, and the daughter had been hit and killed.
Right.
And the mother was just devastated, and she'd been to her minister, she'd been to different people, and finally someone suggested that they call ARE, and I got her, and she was very upset because she didn't necessarily have, a whole lot of religious beliefs, even though she belonged to a church, and she just was worried about her daughter. And I asked the daughter's name, and she said her name's Stacy. And I said, okay, why don't you write out the question, how is Stacy doing? And dream on it and see what happens. And she called me the next day and she said, I had a dream, but it doesn't make any sense. I said, what was the dream? She said, I went out to the cemetery and Stacy was sitting on her grave with a birthday cake and the candle lit. And she looked up and she said, don't worry, Mommy, I'm okay, I'm okay, I'm okay. And the woman says, but she's not okay, she's dead. I said, she's very much alive, she's just not physical. And Cayce would say that when we die, we still can communicate with people who are in a physical body because the mind is not limited to the confines of the physical body. And so it is possible to have communication with deceased loved ones.
Has anybody has Edgar reached out to you or anybody else from the other side?
I have had dreams of Edgar Cayce. I've had dreams of Hugh Lynn Cayce. But let me answer it another way. There are so many people claiming to be the reincarnation of Edgar Cayce.
You knew I was going there. You knew
that we have a form letter for it.
You knew I was going there. Well, I'm going to have one on the show next week.
Okay.
David Wilcock.
Yeah, I know David. Yeah.
Yes, I know you do. And he's written a book about it. Pretty popular book, actually.
Yeah. David's a nice guy.
He's a great guy, and I'm really looking forward to having him on the show. And I find him totally fascinating. And if anything else, he's very healthy for the soul. No matter what you think about David, and you want to be skeptical or not, but he's always got really good advice, and he's just a down-to-earth, nice guy. But what about let's just go there. There a lot of people claim to be a reincarnation of Edgar Cayce. Could he have reincarnated into a couple of hundred bodies?
No, what mostly happens, and this is a story I've told lots of times, is there kind of an analogy to take it off of any present characters.
Okay.
There was a man who came to Edgar Cayce who had memories of being President James A. Garfield, who was one of the early presidents of the United States. And he had been given psychic readings by several psychics telling him he was the reincarnation of President James A. Garfield. Cayce gave him a reading and told him that he was a close friend, associate, and admirer of Garfield, and had so connected with this man and his purpose at the time that part of him really wanted to emulate him and be like him, and that's why he thought he had been James A. Garfield. But he was not James A. Garfield.
Was he able to name names?
He had some memories of other people that had been associated with Garfield. Yes, absolutely.
Wow, that's fascinating. Well, see, that's a different. Well, see, what's.
Let me give you another story from the Bible.
Okay.
In the Old Testament, basically the prophet Malachi says that the prophet Elisha is going to return to announce the coming of the Lord. In other words, that somehow this Old Testament prophet is coming back to announce Jesus is coming or the Messiah is coming. Fast forward. So for a long time, everyone kept thinking there's a Messiah coming, but no one knew who it was, and there were lots of prophets that had followers, but they didn't know who the Messiah was. So on one occasion, Jesus is up at the Mount of Transfiguration, and the apostles with him see him surrounded by light, fall to their knees and think, my God, this could be the Messiah. So one of them asks him, well, if you're the Messiah, where's Elijah? Because we have this prophecy that Elijah is supposed to be back. And Jesus responded and told them that Elijah returned, but they knew him not, and they knew, and he was talking about John the Baptist, that somehow John the Baptist was a reincarnation of Elijah. And Cayce said in his readings, John the Baptist was the reincarnation of Elijah. And interestingly aside, when they ask John the Baptist in the Bible, they ask John the Baptist, are you Elijah? And he says, no, I'm John. In other words, the personality does not come back. It's a soul. If you can imagine your soul as your hand, and your little pinky is the personality you're manifesting at any one time.
Sure.
It's a different experience each and every time. So I do not think that someday Edgar Cayce is going to come back and ask for his life membership back. He's going to have a different work.
What happened to what happened to his body? Has anything been preserved? Was there any?
Well, I mean, he was buried.
What about autopsies? And I'm referring to mainly, has anybody ever checked out his brain or
no?
Was there?
No, we focus on the material, not the man. But he.
Well, there's something special going on with him, is what I'm saying.
Oh, absolutely. But he died back in 1945. He was buried in Hopkinsville, Kentucky. So there was nothing that was done to him.
Did he consider this talent and this gift a burden? Did he feel cursed at any point, or did he feel blessed?
I think early on he felt somewhat cursed because scientists had tried to disprove the fact he was in a psychic state. For example, while he was asleep, they pried one of his fingernails off with a penknife. Another one put a needle through his cheeks.
Why?
Just to see if he would wake up, to see if he was really asleep or if he would wake up. And he had gone to do the experiments to try to figure out how this thing worked and how he could be of more help to people. And instead of being open to the fact that it really does work, they were trying to prove he was a charlatan somehow. And so I think that was really disconcerting for him.
Let's open up the phone lines really quick. This is KJCR, the Dark Matter Radio Network. This is Fade to Black. I'm Jimmy Church. We're with Kevin Todeschi he's the executive director of Edgar Cayce's ARE. And if you have any questions, the lines are open, 323-825-5045. If you want to call in on Skype, you can also do that too as well at Fade2Black14. We've got a few minutes left with Kevin tonight, so if you would like to speak to him directly, have any questions, hey, maybe you can interpret a dream. Can you do that? Could you do that?
Or I can give a quick overview of the major topics in the readings. I'm happy to do anything.
Okay, absolutely. So the phone lines are open, and now with that, I mean, it just seems, I hate to say it in such a religious context, but it's like, to me, it would be a horrible cross to bear. And the reason why I had brought up the deja vu reference earlier, it just solidifies the fact that the future is out there somewhere, because we have all experienced deja vu. And so if that intangible, that stupid thing that is out there, if it is really right there, and you sit down and you at a desk and you realize that the person in front of you is about to say something that you've, thought of and seen 50 times before in your life, and now all of a sudden here it goes, and he fires it off. Well, and you've been, thinking about this and dreaming about this for 10, 15 years. That means somebody has out there could have a way to read the future, to see it, or go backwards. And I'm just saying that it's there. It's an obvious thing. We've all experienced it, and you can't ignore it. I'm not talking about card reading. I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about guessing which horse is going to win. Okay, the first phone call is coming in. Let's grab this really quick. All right, let me bring up the video. Okay, you are live. Turn on your radio. You are live with Kevin Todeschi on Fade to Black. Who's calling?
Hi, Jimmy. It's Renee in Tucson.
Oh, look who it is. Renee in Tucson. How are you, Renee?
Great. I have a question for Kevin.
Absolutely. Kevin, this is Renee. What have you got?
I can't hear Renee if you're...
hold on. Renee, let me turn it up. Okay. Go ahead. Now he can hear you.
Thank you. Kevin, could you please talk about
No, I can't.
when Edgar Cayce discussed his vision of one of his own future lives, where he was traveling in an ET craft above the U.S., looking down at the Earth.
Okay.
Have you come across that?
There's a dream he had where he was born in the future and looking down on the Earth in the year 2108. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So let me give a little background on that.
Okay, well, while you're doing that, Renee, I'm going to say bye and grab this next call, and you can listen to the answer off of the air. How's that?
Thank you.
Thank you, Renee.
So in the 1930s, he was arrested in Detroit for practicing medicine without a license. The charges were later dropped, but he had spent the night in jail. He was depressed to the depths of his soul. He was coming back to Virginia on a train, wondering, why, if I'm supposed to be doing this work, did I have this experience? And he had a dream where he was born again in the year 2108 in Nebraska, which was on a coastline, and that he remembered being Edgar Cayce, and that scientists took him to Virginia Beach and New York in an airship, etc., and he found evidence of his life as Edgar Cayce was still in existence. So because of that dream, a number of people have said, well, Edgar Cayce said Nebraska will one day be the coastline, or we'll have all these horrible earth changes. But Cayce gave a reading on that dream, and twice in the reading he says, this is the interpretation. So that's pretty clear. This is the interpretation. And basically the idea was that though the heaven and earth be removed, in other words, though you be arrested for practicing medicine without a license, your work will survive. So that the dream was basically not a literal dream, but an encouragement that regardless of the challenges he was having in life, his work would still be alive long after his passing.
How did he feel about, I mean, you touched upon it right there, but how did he feel about possible, intelligent life off-world? Did he ever communicate?
Well, again, remember that he died before the UFO.
Exactly. Well, that would be prophetic, wouldn't it?
Right. Well, there are three occasions, readings that he's talking about ships from other spheres, basically ships from other spheres that somehow were communicating with the Atlanteans. It's not clear if the ships belonged to Atlantis and went somewhere else, or came from somewhere else and went into Atlantis. It's unclear, but there are three readings that talk about ships from other realms.
And can you reference one of them besides ship from other spheres? Did he describe what he was seeing, or
no?
Did he?
It's a very brief reference. No one even asked him about it after he said it.
Okay, gotcha. Next call coming in. All right. Hi, you are live with Kevin Todeschi on Fade to Black. Who's calling?
My name's Ira. I just want to talk to Jimmy about the UFO sighting I had in Humboldt County.
Oh, okay. Kevin, you want to hear about a UFO sighting
Sure,
really quick?
I don't mind hearing about it.
Absolutely. Okay, go ahead, Ira.
Are you the call screener?
No, you're speaking with Jimmy.
Are you Jimmy?
Yeah, I am Jimmy. You are live. Yeah, you're live with us right now.
Okay, well, I used to drive a flatbed truck on the Smoke Peninsula around here in Humboldt County.
Uh-huh.
And I was driving along one day, and I know it's not really in the context of the show tonight.
That's fine.
But I saw a little silver sliver out the window, and I thought it was a crack in the windshield. And I looked back again, and it was like this little sliver of metal floating in the air, and it zipped away. Was
it moving?
Yeah, I didn't think anything of it at the time, but the next day in the local paper, and I've been trying to find these articles. I mean, because it was the old days, like in the 90s.
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
And I've been trying to find any kind of anybody else that saw it, but in the paper the next day there was an article that a bunch of people around here saw a sliver of silver in the air over the Pacific Ocean, and they zipped away at astronomical speeds.
Well, you know what you should do? Send me, you've got my email address, send me, the date and the approximate date. Okay.
Well, I can't remember, dude. It was back in 90, probably 93, 94. I mean, it was years ago.
Right. Well, because I've got a lot of people out there, and we can definitely get some research going on it, and I would love to find out a little bit more about it. So
there's been sightings out here before, but it was dude, I swear to God, man, I thought it was an airplane. I thought it was a crack in the glass.
Right. I totally understand.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and no pictures, but if you...
It was amazing, dude.
Okay, again, shoot me an email with the particulars, and I'll look into it for you, and then we'll talk about it again.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah, thank you, man. I've got another call coming in. We're going to try to get some more in before the end of the show. Thank you, Ira.
All right, man. Nice talking, Jimmy. Thank you.
You got it, man. Thank you.
Have a good...
Hi, you're live with Kevin Todeschi right now. Fade to Black. This is Jimmy. Who's calling?
turn down your radio. Okay. Looks like we lost him. Okay, we've got a couple of other calls stacked up. We'll get to them in a second. But the whole UFO aspect with Cayce, 30 years, 20 years in advance of what went down at up in Washington and Roswell, where he has no basis of reference to anything, is absolutely fascinating to me. There wasn't really talk. There wasn't anything public about Martians or you had very little talk of space flight. They really hadn't. There was no real concept of it. We had the man on the moon, and we had the silent film and stuff, but unless you were a fan of that or going out and chasing that down, you wouldn't know anything about it back then.
Right.
Yeah, I absolutely I totally agree with you on that one. And again, for me, when it comes to deja vu, before you go and say anything about not being able to see the future, I'm telling you, you're seeing the future yourself. And that's what I want everybody to base it on. Now let's get back to colors. We started to touch upon that earlier. And I know that he started to talk about colors and auras with people. So let's get into the basics of that, if you could.
Okay, just what different colors mean, for example?
Absolutely. Let's start there.
Okay, well, he could see colored colors around people, colored coronas, let's say. He could see shades around people, and then he described what they would mean. For example, he told his secretary on occasion that when she had red in her aura, he could tell that she was angry with something. If people with green in their aura, he knew that somehow they were working with their own health or were having a healing experience.
Right.
Blue or purple was related to people having thoughts of spirituality. Yellow was related to people reading something or their mind was focused on something. So just from the colors, he came to understand what they all meant. And actually, the only little booklet he ever wrote or helped write was a booklet called Auras, which was about 40 pages long, that just described his experiences with colors.
Got another caller coming. Okay. The calls are coming in, so let's try to get as many in as we can tonight. Hi, you're live with Kevin Todeschi, Jimmy Church on Fade to Black. Who's calling?
Hi, this is Matt.
Hi, Matt. How are you?
Hi. I was wondering if the readings from Edgar Cayce said anything specifically about multiverse or multiple universes existing simultaneously.
Excellent question. Excellent question. What was your name again?
Matt.
Okay, Matt. Thank you for the question. Are you going to take it off the air?
Sure, that'd be great.
Okay. Thank you, Matt. Great question. Did Edgar Cayce ever mention parallel universes, or he probably would have worded it a bit different back then, I would assume.
Well, it's an interesting question because there's so many different ways to answer this. I will say that the readings suggest that you could have parallel lifetimes at the same time, meaning you could be in two different places at once. They also suggest that time is an illusion, meaning that you can have your past life, your present life, and your future life all occurring at the same time. And it also suggests that there are different dimensions in consciousness that we all go through. In terms of parallel timelines, like in one timeline, John F. Kennedy didn't run for president. Something else happened to him. He never talked about that kind of timeline, and nobody asked him about it.
Yeah, again, that's totally a modern subject. And if he broached it like that back then and dropped the words, parallel universe or multi-dimension, and that would have been absolutely amazing. But he alluded to it, is what you're saying.
He alluded to the ability to have experiences in other realms of consciousness, and he alluded to the ability to have more than one lifetime occurring at the same time.
Here's a quick email, just came in, and we'll get to another call here in just a second. Excellent show, Jimmy. And this is from, I think it's Kelly. Okay, Kelly. Anyway, well, there's two names there, so I think it's the last name first, but this is from Kelly. Excellent show, Jimmy. I keep dreaming that someone is chasing me, trying to kill me. This has happened on and off for 20 years, and I sometimes wake up as I'm getting shot. No psychic has ever had a good answer. Could it be a past life haunting me?
That is an excellent thought, and that it absolutely could be a past life experience, that somehow she had an experience of being done in for something. That said, that is not why she's having the dream in the present. When we have a past life dream, it is always connected to something occurring in the present. So what happens is our mind looks for something in the soul's past that can bring to mind resolution of what's going on now. So my guess would be that any time in the present when this person is having an experience of people, her feeling attacked or belittled or criticized or having to get away from a group of people or something, she has this dream where a similar experience happened in the past where she perhaps was done in, and that's why it's called the mind. But it's really about something going on in the present where she's feeling overwhelmed or criticized or belittled or something like that.
I've got a couple of things I'm going to get to from some listeners really quick, but do you ever I'm trying to phrase this correctly. Can you dream about a past life?
Yes, but it's generally connected to something going on in your present. But yes, it's possible to dream about a past life.
And why? This is the dumb question, but you have to just answer the best way you can. Why do people dream about always being somebody famous? Why are
I wouldn't know that. I don't think I would say that. I think that we do have dreams. Keep in mind, we always have dreams that we don't remember, but I think we often have dreams about being in other experiences, being other people, sometimes being a different sex, being in other countries, and maybe those are not as notable as we dream about being
Joan of Arc,
Joan of Arc, or a famous ruler or something.
Well, if somebody comes at you as Joan of Arc or King Edward or whatever, Queen Elizabeth, and the Genghis Khan, right? And they come at you with that. Is that a red flag for you, where it's just probably just imagination?
Well, I mean, it's such a common occurrence. It's like a regular day at work. So it's
right.
I usually talk to people about how sometimes the subconscious mind will use imagery from a known character to really make it more prominent, but it doesn't necessarily mean that we were that person.
Got you.
But instead of embody elements of whatever that person means to us.
We should almost rewind right now and have you say that one more time for everybody.
Okay.
Well, so that's a very, very, very important point.
We often have experiences of either having an affinity to being someone or having a connection to someone, and it's not because we were that person or even that we're supposed to be with that person if we have a crush on someone in the present, but instead that person is bringing to mind something about ourselves that we're really supposed to be working on.
Okay, here's another one. Every now and then I have a dream where I see my grandmother who passed away 10 years before I was born. Okay. She will ask about someone in the family. 100% of the time, the person she asks about will have something bad happen to them, him or her.
Okay.
What does that mean?
Well, I think that it's pretty obvious that somehow when someone passes away, very often they can stay around as kind of like a guardian angel watching out for the family. And so to me it suggests that this grandmother knows this individual has some kind of an intuitive or at least openness to remembering her dreams. So in a sense she's coming as either a warning to tell the dreamer that something's going to happen to this person, or to pray for this person, or to see if they can help this person. Cayce used to use the phrase, to be forewarned is to be forearmed, to somehow, okay, you know something is going to come up, do the best you can to help this person or the situation.
So you would act on it?
I wouldn't necessarily, hey, by the way, I
warn
about
somebody.
Grandma, so that means something bad is going to happen to you. Instead, I would, if for example, I knew something about a friend, I'd say, how you feeling? Are you okay? If they didn't feel good, maybe you should see a doctor. I mean, I would just work with them normally.
Well, how do you arm yourself for that? Knowing, you can't go and talk
if
to...
you know ahead of time.
Well,
if you know ahead of time, you're already armed. I mean, you just have a sense that something could happen to this person, and what can I do to help them, if anything?
Yeah, that's a burden to bear, wouldn't it? And you're waiting for something to happen to your sister because you had the dream last night.
Well, I'm not sure that's where the emphasis should be. The emphasis should instead be on what can I do to help my sister, regardless of what's going on in her own life right now, because someone's concerned about her.
Oh, that's interesting.
So if the grandmother was living and said, how's so and so doing? I'm concerned about her. What would you do in that case? That's how I would approach those dreams.
So not necessarily, stay with them all times of the day to make sure they don't get hit by a car,
right?
And that they're being safe, and they're, yeah, okay, I get it.
Maybe there's something maybe you can just help them be a listening ear, or maybe whatever it is. Yeah.
Keep your eye open. Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. What can we learn? And we're winding down to the end of this, but what can we take away? What can we learn from what Edgar has laid out for us? What can we take away? There's the obvious, the readings and stuff, but what
I would say that regardless of what's going on in a person's life, regardless of the worries or concerns or frustrations or needs they have, that they can get help from the Cayce material just by going to our website, edgarcayce.org. That overall the Cayce information is essentially about the oneness of God. Somehow all of us are connected. The spiritual nature of humankind, that each of us really has a spiritual impulse that drives us forward in life, and the purposefulness of life. We're all here for a reason. And that those three things, I think, really are an overview of what the Cayce material is all about. And he provides tools that each and every one of us, regardless of where we are in life, can become a better person and can live in harmony with those around us in a better way.
Was he religious before he started doing readings?
He was always religious. He was brought up in a very conservative Christian upbringing. As he started giving readings, he really became much more open to this idea of oneness, that somehow God doesn't really care what religion we are, that the goal is to somehow to be the very best. He would use the phrase to be the best Presbyterian, the best Jew, the best Catholic, the best agnostic, whatever it is you can be, that's really why we're here.
Did he take, as he became more and more experienced with readings and what his abilities were, did he take the Bible and religion serious and literal, or was did his stance soften on that a little bit, and how did that view change? I understand what you just said, but I'm talking about his own personal.
Well, I would say that he personally read the Bible once through for every year of his life, but rather than just seeing it as a God stop speaking here kind of thing, he was much more ecumenical than that. In fact, he had so many Bible notes when he taught the Bible class. We have a book called Edgar Cayce's Story of the Bible that is probably as thick as the Bible, giving additional information on some of those, many of those Bible stories.
Okay, one last email, and then we'll wind this down if you don't mind.
Okay.
Okay, this is from JC. Looking at all possibilities, what if deja vu is a glitch in the brain misfiring? For example, when you see a face and in the crowd, the brain goes through its process sending signals telling you, this face, it is possible that very sequence of events could simply be misfiring. And
okay.
have you seen this before?
Well, I can only speak personally. I've had enough experiences. Let me tell you one quick experience, because I know you'd need to go. My wife and I built a house out in the country. And before the house was built, the contractor called me and said, the surveyors have just laid out the house. They're going to pour the concrete foundation tomorrow morning. I said, great. I'll go see it after the foundation is poured. I didn't go out to the property. I went to sleep that night, and I had a dream. And in the dream, I go to I'm at the house, and I'm inside the house, and I hear horses chewing something on the backyard. So I go in the backyard, and the neighbor's horses' heads are over the fence eating off the porch. I woke up instantly thinking, my God, they put the house back too far. I drove 20 miles to where the house is, and sure enough, the surveyors had made a mistake, and the house was been staked out 50 feet back further than it was supposed to be. And the concrete trucks were on its way. I called the builder and told him to stop the trucks because the surveyors had made a mistake. Experiences like that were over and over and over and over again, where you get insights or information or ahas that came out of nowhere, and it's not just once or twice or 6 or 12, but it's just a regular part of life. It tends to make you a believer that there's something here.
Right.
And the more I work with the Cayce material, the more convinced I am that it can truly transform your life and give you insights into every area of your life.
How can everybody contact you? I know that we have the links directly to edgarcayce.org with your name, and everybody listening to the show knows how to where we do that. But is there anything else that you can suggest? I've got, you know what? I have one call coming in, and I don't want to ignore somebody that is just been trying to get through to us all night. So let's just, hi, you're live with Kevin Todeschi, Jimmy Church on Fade to Black. Who's calling?
Hi, this is Tim.
We can barely hear you. Go ahead. Say it again.
Hi, this is Tim.
Oh, hi, Tim.
Hi, Tim.
How are you, sir?
Good, how are you?
Okay. Yeah, we're doing great. Doing great. Question for Kevin really quick, the last one of the night.
Yeah, I have a question about Edgar. Did he ever mention anything about the existence of ghosts? And if so, why they're around still?
Sure. I mean, he talked a lot about ghosts. Lots of times, ghosts are people. People in our own life who are concerned about us can hang around as a ghost. If it's a ghost that's haunting a place, I know this is going to sound weird, but lots of times the ghost doesn't know he's dead. He or she is dead. And so you need someone to talk to the ghost very calmly, say, you may not know this, but you passed away. Look for the light. Someone will come help you. If a ghost is haunting a place and seems somewhat evil is too strong a term, but not friendly, it's because the ghost doesn't really want to move on, and you can actually have a healing or a blessing or a cleansing of the place. So yes, ghosts are simply earthbound souls who, for whatever reason, are hanging around. Sometimes it's to help us, sometimes because they don't want to be dead, or they don't know they're dead.
Hey, Tim, where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Buffalo, New York.
Buffalo, New York. Well, you know what? Summer's coming, man. You're probably starting to just thaw. Tim, call into the show anytime. Thank you. Anything else really quick? Yeah,
if you don't mind, I actually wanted to mention or say hi to Kevin. Me and my cousin Matt, who got through earlier on the show.
Oh, how you doing? Yes.
Okay.
How you
I don't know if you remember us, Kevin.
Nice. I do remember you. I hope you guys are coming back to visit sometime.
Yeah, we're hoping to come down for the Congress there and meet up with you again and have a good time with all the area people.
Okay, great. Yeah, we're having the grand opening in June of the Cayce Hospital building being renovated.
Hey, Tim. Maybe in a few months, 6 months, we might do a broadcast out there, and so come down and see us, and we'll do kind of got an informal invitation today. He said the facilities are really nice there in Virginia Beach.
They are, and you're invited, Jimmy.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Tim. You have a great weekend.
You too. Thanks for the call.
Thank you. Yeah, and the thing is with ghosts, and for all of us, I think I've seen one once. It's not like I hope nobody sees them every day. I don't know, but really quick, did he ever say that they were bad or they were good or that they could harm you?
They cannot harm you as long as you are not open psychically. I mean, if you mess around with drugs, if you have a problem with alcoholism, if you have an opening, let's say, because your spine's maladjusted, they can play mental tricks on you, let's say, or they can even give you the feeling of being possessed. But generally, they cannot harm you. They can just give you the EBGBs.
Interesting. And that's actually good news. So I want to thank you, Kevin. There was an extraordinary evening, and we could do this for another 3 hours. And thank you for hanging on for an extra 15 minutes and taking all those calls. I know it's very late now for you, and you probably got a company to run tomorrow.
I got to get up and go to work. We're having a graduation for Atlantic University tomorrow. But I appreciate the opportunity, Jimmy, and seriously, if you want to come to Virginia Beach, just let us know, and we'll work it out.
We'll be there.
All right. Thanks for having me on the program.
Thank you, Kevin. You have a great night.
All right. Take care.
Bye-bye. Kevin Todeschi. And again, I say this after every guest is on this show. That is why you are here, to learn. And that was amazing for me. And I thought I was pretty well read on Cayce. And anybody that knows my wife can ask her what I went through about a year ago with Edgar Cayce and trying to go another notch deeper and another notch deeper and finding out more and more. And I spent a large part of my life doing that. And tonight I feel pretty good about myself. So with that, let's go ahead and take a quick break, and we'll be back right after this. This is Fade to Black on the Dark Matter Radio Network. Got a couple more emails that I'll get to tonight. I'll check Twitter out. And, I've got 5-10 minutes. You want to squeeze one more call in? We could probably do it. 323-825-5045. I'll be back right after this. Stay with us.
Hi, everybody. This is Rob Halford, the Metal Guard on JimmyChurchRadio.com.
What's up? My name's Brian Taylor, Ninja Badass Extraordinaire, and this is JimmyChurchRadio.com.
JJCR in your face.
JimmyChurchRadio.com on the Dark Matter Radio Network.
Oh, yeah. Fade to Black. Love this part. Oh, another call coming in. Okay, let's grab it. Why not? This is Fade to Black. You're on with Jimmy Church. Where are you calling from? Who's calling?
Oh, it's Ira again.
Oh, hi, Ira. How are you? Oh, I saw your email. They actually just sent it in here,
You
too.
I posted on the forum?
What's that?
You saw I posted on the forum?
Well, my producers just sent this in here to me, and it says, I didn't find your email, but here's my sighting. So let me read it to you really quick, Ira. Okay?
Yeah. Go ahead, man.
Okay, you say,
Fire away.
I was driving a flatbed truck up the Samoa Peninsula here in Humboldt Bay, and I saw a metallic sliver out of the back corner of my eye. So I'm assuming that was to your left, right?
Yeah, it was.
Okay, so let me finish, and then I got some questions for you. It says, I thought it was maybe a crack in the windshield or maybe an airplane. When I looked back and it was gone, I thought nothing of it until the next day when the local paper said several people had called the sheriff's department about seeing a metallic object that hovered over the ocean and sped off to the east at a high velocity. And yeah, no, that's not crazy. That's not.
It was a sliver. It was like you know what it was like? It was like a fingernail clipping, but it was metallic silver out in the sky. And I live here. I mean, there's airships around, and I've seen all this stuff a million times.
Right.
And it just vanished. It was very bizarre.
And
there's all kinds of weird stuff out here.
Well, yeah, there is. Up in Humboldt in Northern California, this is what people don't understand. You live there.
But this is business country, too.
Yeah, exactly. And people around the United States, they think of California, they think of L.A. and San Francisco, and you can probably throw a little San Diego in. But what they don't understand is half of this state, half of it, is nothing but desert and forest and mountains, very sparsely populated, and you could.
Oh yeah, I seen weird stuff out here in the redwood country that you wouldn't even believe, dude. I could talk to you about it for hours.
Oh, give me an example.
The weird things I've seen.
Go ahead.
Well, I mean, we used to booty womp when we were kids,
right?
Out in the redwoods, and we would see just like slaughter, like there were like elk slaughters.
Uh-huh.
There were just like tons of just bones and stuff, just weird things.
Well, and again,
It's hard to explain. It's almost like one of those kind of things where you gotta like actually come see for yourself. You know what I mean?
yeah. And it's also very spiritual up there too. There's a lot of things that go on all the time, and you can from Mount Shasta, it's crazy stuff that goes on there, all the way south through Humboldt. There's things in the air, there's things on the ground, there's things in the trees. And if you, it's a whole mix of everything. You've got Bigfoot.
Well, actually, I think I sent you a thing a while back. I wanted you to get like David Pallades on here.
Oh, yeah.
The Hoopa Project and the Missing 411 and all that.
That's an excellent example.
Deals with a lot of this, a lot of this weird stuff that goes on up here, and I've actually been witness to a lot of it, dude.
Well, David Pallades, the reason why we haven't had him on, when you sent me that email, I had contacted him, and yes, he's friends of the show, and he's friends of a lot of friends of mine, and we wanted to get him on, but then he was on Coast to Coast, and so we just couldn't. It just wouldn't be fair to everybody or to him to do that so close together. But we'll get him on next month. See, the thing is, let me tell you about David one thing, and then I want to hear.
That would be pretty cool. I'm Iraq Indian, so.
Well, see. All of David's stuff is documented, and you listen to how he presents it with missing kids and how they get separated from their parents, and that stuff is real, and that stuff goes down, and Humboldt County is a pretty mysterious place for stuff like that because you don't know, it's too big, you can't go and search.
Yeah. Well, I mean, but a lot of this Bigfoot stuff. I know a lot of the old Yurok legends and stuff and all that. It's pretty cool. I mean,
you're listening to.
You gotta like see it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you're listening to yourself echo because I can hear it in the background.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's a little rough. Hey, Ira, thank you, man. And listen, as far as Pallades goes,
I love talking to Jimmy. You are Arbell's successor, man. As far as I'm concerned, and I've been an Arbell fan since the beginning of time.
Yeah, we all have, and thank you for that. It's a compliment, and I'm humbled by that. And
hey, if I see or hear anything up here, man, I'll definitely call you again.
Oh, absolutely. You do that. And like I said, we'll have Pallades on next month. Okay?
Yeah. Get him on, man. I'm like his biggest fan. Me and my sister are like.
Well, he's one of the very rare, straightforward, honest
he's a
guys.
researcher. And,
he's a researcher.
And a lot of the people he's interviewed in Hoopa Valley, I mean, I know those families, you know.
This is the thing, Ira. This is the truth. Is David talks about a subject that nobody else will talk about, and the media does not cover this, and you don't hear reports about this stuff on the news, and it should be all over the place, and that's why I applaud him. I do, and I think most people do. They look up to David a lot. And like I said, I would love to have him on the show. He's just, he was just on, that other program. So we'll give it a little time. But
when you live out here, you see weird things all the time. I mean, it puts. Seriously, this is just maybe an exaggeration, but sometimes it puts like Travis Walton to shame. The things we see out here.
Right.
No, I've gone hunting in the freaking wilderness. I've been out there. I've been humping the outback. And they're just some weird things. It's crazy, man.
I love Humboldt County, man. And northern, like I said, from
between like the Oregon border and all those back roads. I mean,
that's what I'm talking about.
You haven't lived until you rode those back roads.
I'm telling you, go up and find a back road up around Mount Shasta, right around the lake up there. Head east or west. And just keep going.
I've hiked the marbles, man.
Exactly. Exactly.
I've hiked in the Marble Mountains, dude. Trust me, man. I've got stories. I mean, I'm sure you don't have much more time, but
No, we're out of time. But
I still have some more stories, though.
Hey,
I'll call in if you want to hear some more stories.
Absolutely, I can keep
maybe tomorrow or something.
I can keep doing it all the time. So listen, we're going to roll on out of here, Ira, and I'll talk to you tomorrow. And tomorrow night,
I'll call you. I'll call in for a couple more stories or email you or something. What's the best way to get a hold of you? I definitely have some stories you would love to hear.
Jimmy at jimmychurchradio.com during the day is the best way to get a hold of me. Oh, you always have Facebook too. And I'm on top of that stuff all the time. Okay, we got to get out of here, man. We're at the end of the night. I just got the 3-minute cue.
Time.
Thank you, Ira. You have a great weekend. I'll talk to you tomorrow.
Have a good one, Jimmy.
You too, man. Bye-bye. All right. So, really quick, tomorrow night is Andrew Basiago. Tomorrow night, time travel show tomorrow night. And also, I'm going to jump a little bit into singularity. And next week, I don't know if you have seen it, but there's a movie out there that's pretty cool. It's called Thrive. And if you haven't seen it, you can see it. It's free on YouTube. And I might have a little Thrive surprise next week. We also just mentioned earlier tonight the cat got out the bag a little bit with Kevin. But next week we'll have on David Wilcock as well. And I'm looking forward to that. And the week after that, we're going to do some live channeling on the show. And if you've never experienced that, we're going to be doing that in 2 weeks, and I can't wait for it. I wanted to go back and talk really quick about the singularity stuff that I had referenced earlier. There's 2 or 3 names I want everybody to check out and get back to me. I want to hear some email or read some email on this. But that is Ray Kurzweil, okay, very important. Werner Ving, it's Vinge. The Singularity Conference. You want to check that out. And you also want John von Neumann. John von Neumann was a mathematician. In 1958, regarding a conversation with von Neumann, Stanislaw Ulam described ever-accelerating progress of technology, and he tried to describe it back then. And so this is not a new subject. This isn't something that just went down last week or last month with Ray Kurzweil. This is something that has actually been prophetized and is coming to fruition. And it has everything to do about this show tonight. Okay, it's very important. Singularity. And then we're going to jump into that next week. And I've got a surprise with that too as well. Stay tuned, everybody. Coming up next, Spooky South Coast with Tim Weisberg and that shirt of his. Special thanks to Keith Rowland and Art Bell. Fade to Black's producer is Rita Kamarian. Show is produced by Hilton J. Palm and Mark D. Kovar. The announcers are Steve Harder and Mark D. Kovar. Music is this guy right here. That's Doug Aldrich. Plays in a little band called White Snake. Fade to Black is produced by KJCR. For the Dark Matter Radio Network, I'm your host, Jimmy Church. And I'm saying it right now. Good night, everybody. Tomorrow night, Andrew Basiago, Time Travel Special. Have a good night, everybody. I'll talk to you tomorrow. See ya.